Well, geez, I have just been chatting away with my mic off. So let me see if I can repeat all of that. It was so good, y'all. I promise. I want to say welcome back to Advocacy Arena's weekly live chat where we gather weekly to inform and inspire civic engagement each Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern and 12 p.m. Central Time. I want to thank you for continuing to join us, participate, and support us in this initiative each week. I am so thankful to have Wilson here with us, who is going to be broadcasting our conversation on his Resist Radio. I am so grateful to his offer for that. It always helps to have our messages amplified to be able to reach a larger audience. And as you can see from the title today, past this prologue, of course, we're going to cover a lot of the top news stories, but I would like to put it in the perspective of historical narrative. And so much of what is happening now, this push toward authoritarianism, is very reminiscent of times in our recent past. Here in our country, but globally. And I think it's important because I feel like it is missing quite often from our understanding, from the media coverage. And I do think that it's important that we understand because, as the saying goes, if you don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And most of this history is not anything that I would like to see us repeat it. And I see that Joseph is up with us. I'm looking forward to having him share with us and giving us update. And later in the conversation, Dr. Marshall, our beloved Dr. Marshall, is going to be sharing with us, and I'm looking forward to that because she certainly has a great perspective to share with us in respect to some of these historical events. And I do think it is important because I feel that our civics education is missing now from the general educational curriculum, as well as some historical um, aspects and perspectives. And Mud Puppy is going to be joining us in the conversation at some point today as well, so we can talk about and connect some of the dots to dark money. So I'm really looking forward to a wonderful conversation today. And with that, I'd like to get the conversation started first with a greeting from our fabulous co-host, Soul Sister, and then we will go to Joseph and Dr. Marshall. So, Sister, are you there?
I couldn't get my mic on.
That's
Oh my
okay.
gosh, I
Hey,
kept hitting it.
I gave a whole opening spiel with my mic off. So
It was probably acting like mine, where you kept hitting it, or you hit it and you thought it did it, and you started talking. That's that. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyway, happy Monday. Happy to be here. Spring is springing here in Michigan, and I'm once again humbled and delighted to be here in Advocacy Arena. So before we get started, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the No Labels Party. As we know, they have ended their campaign. The No Labels Party failed at being able to produce a single candidate that would be in it to win it all. That candidate never materialized because the ground game has never been built. And I think that's really important for people to understand. And it's really incredible that No Labels Party would even propose putting up a candidate for the highest office in our country when they haven't proven themselves to the American public that they are a party that we can believe in or even get behind. And No Labels Party has literally zero presence in any official capacity at any level of government. So these were very high ambitions to be reaching for the Oval Office in such a crucial year. So even with the near impossible chance that could have occurred with them staying in the race, and had they gained as much as even 40% of the vote, which we knew that wasn't happening. But let's just pretend they would have been throwing the electoral college off balance. And then guess what? It would still be a Congress made up of Republicans and Democrats who decided who our president was in the end. So it would have proven nothing. So I'm glad they're gone. I think it's really important for us to remember that American politics has been based off of a two-party system since the 1850s. I'm going to say it again. American politics has been based off a two-party system since the 1850s. And if there's nothing that is true about our political system, it's that change happens in increments. And they have done nothing to incrementally establish themselves in any way in the past couple of years that we've been having to deal with third parties involved in our elections at all, especially at such a crucial time. So, regardless of the unenthused and the unengaged and the uncommitted, 2024 was never going to be the year of plurality or parliamentary embracing by the American public. No Labels Party had never established a clear agenda, a platform, or ideology other than not being the Democrat or not being the Republican Party. The last ditch attempt by the No Label Party was the unity ticket. I know we all remember the unity ticket. Um, and a unity ticket in an environment where bipartisan legislation gets stuck in the House because Republicans refuse to even accept cooperation or compromise, and they see it as selling out because they'd rather deal in chaos and fear mongering because that's MAGA's ultimate goal. They want to break the system and then complain that the system is broken and then replace it with a system that damages our democracy and demolishes the freedoms of the American people and harms the nation that we know and love, or at least the one that we are trying to build and accept and love. But let's take a step back and look at the people who they propose, or at least the people that we know about. So pay attention to that part. Larry Hogan, Nikki Haley, Joe Manchin, Chris Christie. And for me, and obviously many others, these weren't the people that I could trust with my national, financial, or social security. The only credit I will give the No Labels Party is that they abandoned their presidential campaign and they won't be a spoiler for November 2024. And it's a known fact that while the MAGA Republican Party is loud and will vote, the party is stagnant. They're not growing, but they are growing desperate. So they encourage the contrarians and the chaos makers, one and the same, and those who literally don't want to play Russian roulette, literally or figuratively, with our democracy. The moderate think tank, it's called Third Way. They began to mobilize, so Third Way, along with many other activist groups, but it really kind of was given a big push by Third Way. There's an article up in the Nest actually that kind of gives a little bit more details about. There's a conversation that happens in the Washington Post, and it'll give you some details that I'm going to just kind of skim over really quickly here. But they found support not only among voters, but also among the proposed candidate. And they reached out to convince them to decline the No Labels nomination if they were offered it as early as September the 2022. So that's important to keep in mind. I didn't realize that they had been working, for almost 2 years. And they kept the pressure on. And there were nearly 24 candidates that we don't even know about that they had to also approach and keep the pressure on. And they never named them in this article. And I'm sure maybe at some point or maybe in another publication, there's a few more details about who those other 24 candidates were, but not in this one. But, they stayed on Third Way's radar until the very end, and I'm glad they did. So Third Way bought ads on social media, digital media, and mainstream media with basically the messaging focusing on political classes and supporters of the potential candidate. And the most effective messaging that has remained is that Biden will protect our democracy and ensure responsible governing and make sure that the country stays that way, and that a third party vote would be inviting a madman into the White House. And it's a very real and very true danger to our democracy ending in this country. So here we are. No labels is gone, but RFK Jr. remains. Not that he was connected to it, but he might as well have been. They're very closely tied. And he doesn't mind having that title of being a spoiler for the former president. He's embraced it. I know that people have probably seen some of the posts and tweets that I know I saw plenty of it yesterday on my timeline. I'll make sure that I post it up in the nest. There's some good ones that, his campaign manager has been very vocal within their meetings with people who are supporting RFK Jr. And it's really a shame because the whole goal isn't for him to be the president. It's simply to get the former guy back in the office. And it's sickening. So while RFK may carry the blood of America's Camelot, he's neither noble nor a hero of the American people. Some of the dark money ties that were tied to the No Labels Party include top donors that also support and donate to the former president, like Nelson Peltz, Stephen Schwartzman, James Murdoch, Louis Bacon, and they all donated $1 million each. I am going to also find the thread that kind of showed who the major donors that are really just going back to the former president after Nikki Haley has dropped out and the third party has disbanded. I'm sure that we will find some ties of their donations linked to RFK Jr., who is basically just he's I hate to say his name. He's just another former president, the former guy in a sheep's clothing of the Kennedy name. I'm just not going to say. I refuse to say that man's name. I'm so sorry. And I know it might seem childish to some people, but I cannot do it. I don't do it in my normal life, and I just don't want to do it here either. So no labels has ended, and it's a distinct reminder that the polls don't vote. They looked at the polls and they thought, oh, we have a disenchanted populace, or electoral voters here in our population, and for sure they're going to go for someone like an option as no labels for their third party because it's a different choice, and really that just didn't prove to be the case. And thank you so much to all of the activists and Third Way for really getting down in the dirt and fighting that ground game and making it, putting on the pressure and making it be that they had no choice but to disband themselves. So voters who are debating on sitting out of the presidential election this November and who are disillusioned or disengaged, I hope they see that this is not the time to be playing games. This is our democracy. It is important. It could very well change everything that we know. Throughout this space, Miss D is going to highlight, as well as many others who contribute, will highlight the different areas or the different agencies that we look to for protection that are seriously at risk, that have proven themselves to even be under the persuasion of extremism. And so people who are thinking that there are safeguards in place, they really shouldn't be feeling so comfortable. And the people who want chaos are still the exact same people who are sitting in their houses. They flip a switch and the lights come on just fine. They go to the gas station and they can afford the gas regardless of what the price is right now. And mine is still very moderate. I know I've heard people claiming that there's been an increase. I haven't seen it here. And I live in the Motor City. And believe me, we get hit. We get hit just as bad as, some of the worst parts of this country. So these are people who think that everything's going to maintain the same in their day to day lives if chaos were to actually happen. And it would be chaos, and they're wrong. So I think we really need to stay in this fight and stay committed to making sure that we're educating people and just staying on message, because that's what Third Way did. And they got rid of no labels. I'm sure that we could do the same with RFK Jr. I think he's only registered or on the ballot in something like 6 or 7 states. That's not many. We have to make sure that we preserve our democracy. I want to live in a country that holds the same values that I hold dear and that is working towards building a better society than the one I was born into. And right now, all of that is at risk. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Misty.
Well, thank you for that update on no labels. And that is one story that I am so glad that we are able to tell and discuss here. In our conversation today, along with the rise in white supremacy. And Dr. Marshall will kind of touch on that, because what I want to continue to do and to get better at is calling out the media, how they are failing us, but also highlight the ones who are doing a good job, who are trying to improve, because the media, as our beloved Danny often reminds us, is, the free press is in our Constitution, and it is one of the pillars that sustains a democracy. And we have a current ethos of them trying to both sides things, and reporting on the sensational aspects and not what's at stake. And what's at stake now is our democracy. It is truly at risk. So much so that a beloved family, I think known worldwide, Dr. Martin Luther King, his family on the 4th marked the 56th anniversary of his assassination here in Memphis, Tennessee. And they hold the commemoration every year. But this year, and oftentimes members, one or two members of the family may show up. But this year, the King family felt it was necessary for them to present a united front and to come here. Very intentional, because what they recognize, like I and many others who are paying attention, is that there is that same ethos that is rising, that took their father's life and many other civil rights leaders during this time, like Medgar Evers and Malcolm X and many others. They recognize that we are now experiencing that same atmosphere in this country. There is a proliferation and an encouragement on the part of one of the people running for president of political violence, of white supremacy, of white Christian nationalism. And it's just a new iteration of the KKK, which is what the members of the leaders of the civil rights, well, not just the leaders, anyone who was working in that effort to secure civil rights for all of us, they were facing these same things, and yet they overcame. And so I think it is important that, again, like I said, we recognize our history, and recognize where we are now, and know that we too can overcome these issues, and also to highlight the tools and things that we can use. The media certainly could be a big help. And I want to applaud Ali Velshi, because he had a great segment on Sunday that I caught, and he had Molly Jean Fast, and there was a professor, I don't remember her name, but I do have the episode in the Nest and on my timeline, where they really discuss this in depth. I also have put Gene Obadiah, a post from him where he talks about the industrialists of the Holocaust. They're supporting Hitler, and how we have now billionaires supporting the former guy. Like, he wasn't going to be outdone because President Biden had a fabulous turnout at a fundraiser where he was flanked by two other great presidents. And while the former guy has no presidents supporting him, he does have quite a few billionaires. And what is interesting and should not be forgotten or overlooked by any of us is that he is never their first choice. He wasn't their first choice in 2016, but when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, they look to the candidate who is going to address their concerns, and their concerns, for the most part, are less taxes, fewer regulations, and they're willing, they being the billionaires, and during the rise of the Nazis, it was the industrialists and the billionaires of that time. They were willing, for their own greed and profit, to do away with democracy. And I think that we need to continue to be aware of that. Now, again, Ali did a fabulous job on that segment and covering that. Where I feel like there was a media fail this week was, again, like I said, the King family visited Memphis to commemorate a horrific moment in our American history, in our civil rights fight. Yet, how many of you saw any coverage of that? Not many. So I am again grateful that Dr. Marshall is here with us to join in the conversation today. And of course, we know that things are moving very rapidly in Israel. I'm hoping that maybe Nir may be able to join us later. If not, I do want to discuss some, important changes that are occurring there in the Gaza conflict. Israel has pulled all their troops out, and of course, President Biden had a stern talk with him, and I think that it did result in some changing strategies. Bibi is facing a backlash of his own countrymen. They're calling for a an election as early as September, and people are marching in the streets. But we also have Ukraine that we're dealing with. And I talk about these things because Ukraine is defending democracy for all Western democracies. And so Congress will be reconvening this week, and they are still hemming and hawing around the funding. And I think that we as citizens should be calling and writing them and letting them know that we want them to be funded and supported. Because, the crazy thing about all of this, it's not like we're just giving them money. What part of the proposal is to give them weaponry, so that the money actually is going to U.S. Manufacturers of weapons to help replenish our supply and to bring about new, more modern weapons for us. Basically, they're getting our used stock. So why there is any backlash about that is kind of crazy, but I know that that too is being driven by the dark money billionaires, because this is something that has been an issue and for the Heritage Foundation, the authors of Project 2025. They demanded that the Ukraine funding be tied to the border. And again, we have seen over and over again, they do not want solutions. What they want is to have their agenda be fulfilled in a way, and to also galvanize talking points and their base, small though it is, to be able to rally around certain things like the border and those things. So, again, the billionaires and the dark money controlling our democracy and not in a good way. But I'm going to take a pause in those things and go to first Joseph and then Dr. Marshall. And hopefully, shortly after that, we can get Mud Puppy up in our conversation and we'll just kind of go from there. And again, I just want to thank you all for joining us. Here in the advocacy arena discussion this week. So, Joseph, how are you today, my dear?
Fine, thank you, Ms. D. How are you?
I'm great.
Good, good. Well, hello, Soul Sister. Happy Monday. Thank you for inviting me to come up. I have a couple of quick updates before I want to give a couple of historical examples related to authoritarianism and things that we're seeing in this country. I'm glad that you chose this theme because I know we chatted a little bit after a conversation last week, and that yeah, it's very very timely. And given that I'm a history geek, I think there's plenty that we can pull from in history because there are people in this country, both on the extreme right and the extreme left, that want to repeat the same mistakes of the past. So, but anyhow, let me start with a couple of quick updates from here from out west. We have some very exciting in out of Arizona that Attorney General Chris Mays is expanding her investigation of the fake elector scheme from the 2020 election. And there are a couple of high profile names that have been mentioned, including MAGA loudmouth Congressman Andy Biggs. I don't know too many other details, but I know he has been named in this investigation, and so of course he's spouting off even more nonsense than usual. But I would let him be held criminally responsible for what he did, trying to subvert the will of Arizona. So, and this, I have said it before in this space, and I will say it again: elections matter. Attorney General Chris Mays won her election in 2022 by only a little bit over 200 votes. Every single vote mattered. Had she not won, we would have had a Trump surrogate, Abe Hamadeh, in office right now, and none of this would have been happening. Also, along those lines, is not along the lines of the fake elector scheme, but along the lines of her work, is continuing to investigate companies that are basically stealing Arizona's water supply. She held a town hall last week in La Paz County, which is in western Arizona. It's one of the counties that borders California, and it's where some agricultural takes place. But it's a very in the summertime is very very hostile climate, very very hot. And she held a town hall there with residents to hear their concerns about the water supply. And again, she's showing that she cares about all Arizonans, because La Paz County is a very Republican county, but she is showing that she is the attorney general for all Arizonans. So that was really great of her to do that. Also, quick update from Nevada. I saw a tweet just a little while ago that Jackie Rosen raised over $5 million in the first quarter for her reelection campaign, and now has over $13 million cash on hand. That is phenomenal. She is going to need every dollar of that. Her presumed opponent, although the primary hasn't taken place yet, but the main Republican challenger is Sam Brown, who I mentioned last week. He is an Afghanistan war veteran, and he is a very dangerous MAGA. Very, very dangerous. It's we're gonna need Jack to win that, because he's just spewing all sorts of dangerous MAGA rhetoric. So I will be posting more updates as they come available. Also, I put on my timeline a little while ago retweet from Nevada's Democratic Party highlighting all three of Nevada's House members who are Democrats, and of course the fact that the road to taking back the House means that all three need to hold their seats. So if you go to my timeline, you'll see it. I'll probably put it in the jumbotron as well. So that's updates here from out west. Really nothing to talk about much California. But if anything comes of it, anything newsworthy happens here, I will let you know. Let's see. So going back to this of authoritarian, a couple of examples. Something I remember I mentioned I think in this space last year about how the Republican assault on education reminds me in some ways of what happened in Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge took over. And that was deadly literally was deadly for educators. The Khmer Rouge just took an all-out assault on anybody who was educated, and they just murdered educated people. They saw it as something that went against their extreme communist principles, and they just did away with it. So universities were essentially shut during the time that the Khmer Rouge was in power, and it was tough. So when I see Republicans doing this assault on public education, it was it's scary. It's scary because they don't want the public to be educated, because as a less educated public tends to vote for them. So that's how that's one of the things we need to combat. Another example that I saw yesterday. Well, let me give it a little bit of context. So yesterday I was running an errand in one of the neighboring cities about 10 minutes south of me on the freeway. And in that city, Irvine, California, there is considerable Iranian American community. And on one street corner, there was a large crowd that had gathered to basically, rally in support of Iranian exiles who are against the Islamic regime. And where I used to live, there was also a considerable Iranian American, and I met a number of people, usually in my work, that had immigrated from Iran, and they left when things got bad after the Ayatollahs took over in seven. And the stories they told about what they went, it's terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. And everything that I have ever read about Iran under the Ayatollah, it just reminds me so much of what the Republicans want to do here, except in a white Christian nationalist form. Not even traditional Christianity, because if this was a traditional Christian country, we wouldn't have problems with homelessness or poverty or a lot of other. But the Republicans want to impose a harsh white Christiocracy on this country, much like the Ayatollahs have done in an Islamic form, Iran. And I don't know if a lot of really see the dangers of that and the parallels to that, and that we could be losing a lot of right. Because I've talked to some of these Iranian Americans, and they, particularly women, and they lost a lot of right when after the Ayatollahs took over. I don't want to lose my right. There are a lot of rights we had to fight for, and our elders had to fight for, and I'm not about to give those up. And it's very troubling. I saw something very troubling on the timeline last week, that a lot of these far left Twitter comments, so forth, they were actually calling for Iran to attack Israel. So, and of course, without any regard for, of course, people who live in Israel, but of course, any regard for Iranian Americans fled that oppressive regime, who want to see not only that oppressive regime be overthrown, but they want peace in the entire Middle East. But the Twitter left have this romanticized worldview of authoritarian for whatever reason. And as we know, there is nothing romantic about. I've got other examples, but I know other people probably want to come up and speak, so I'll stick a pin in it, and I'll come back up in case we have more time. But I've got plenty of other examples of from a history of why authoritarian not be romanticized. And as I mentioned in this space last week, whether it's fascist or communist, they're both sides of the same ugly coin. So with that, I will land my plane. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Soul Sister. And like I said, I'll stick a pin in some other thoughts, and if time permits, I'll add some more to that.
Thank you so much, Joseph, and I appreciate you bringing those particular stories to the conversation because, like you said, it's not all the same, but it is. It comes in different varieties, but none of it is good. And so I am glad that you brought those things up, and we will come back to that because during your commentary there I had some thoughts that you provoked some thoughts and just some examples that I wanted to share with their audience too. And I do think that not only this authoritarianism, but this white Christian nationalism, it is rising. It is so ugly, and it probably touches people in ways that maybe some folks are not really aware of because again, kind of like patriotism, the far right has hijacked the meaning, and we need to untangle that, push back on it, and claim Christianity, but call out the white extreme Christian nationalism that they are trying to advance in this country. So we will come back to that. But we're going to go next to Dr. Marshall. I am so looking forward to hearing from her today. I hope all is well. I know folks are very excited about the eclipse, depending on where you are. You may get a good view of it or not here. We're not really in the path, and it is a cloudy day, but it is a very important phenomena that I'm glad that we're all living to be able to experience. So, without further ado, I am going to give the mic to Dr. Marshall and have her share with us today. So, welcome, Dr. Marshall. How are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Miss D, Soul Sister. Thank you, Joseph. You always bring so much wonderful information to the space. Um, I was especially, I don't know if touched is the right word, but you triggered some memories for me when you were talking about the extreme right and white Christian nationalism or white Christian racism is what I would call it, and the whole concept. False concept, in my opinion, of white supremacy. It's not false because that's what we've been living under since emancipation, before and after. I'm, I guess I might say that I'm a little bit conflicted at the moment because New York is in the 90% visibility of the eclipse. And uh, I can't really speak for the rest of you in the space, but just looking at the faces and having been in this space for a long time, the next time a total eclipse comes, I think it's in 2049 or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
like 44 or something
40,
like that.
some tremendous number of years that I know I won't be around. But I just wanted to share some thoughts and feelings, experiences that I've had recently with respect to Dr. King and what happened during a 5-year period of my life that I feel as though I'm reliving. I have felt probably for the last year, especially, and definitely for the last 6 months, that I'm reliving my childhood, reliving the years, especially my senior year in high school and my college years, not because I especially or particularly wanted to go back and remember that area or that time period. However, just the manner in which the orange, I call him the orange haired man, and his supporters who speak out, the conservatives who support him, and even that group of Republicans who don't want, maybe they don't want to support him, but they're afraid to speak out against his brand of humanity. He doesn't have anything positive to say as far as I'm concerned. But I I thought about, for the first time in 56 years, I Dr. King's birthday sneaked up on me. Usually I am in tremendous stress leading up to his assassination and his birthday, because I was a senior in college when he was assassinated. And I remember even before then, when I look at the timeline, Medgar Evers is assassinated in June of 1963. Then President Kennedy in November of 63. I am a senior in high school at that time, going into my senior year, starting my senior year off. And suddenly my world, my naive world, because I thought, I think most of us think when we are in our senior year of high school, especially, that we know everything. And if we think that we are uninformed, many of us aren't going to admit that, because we all want to be accepted at that point in our lives. We are turning 18. We think we're grown. Some of us will even say, I know I'm grown. And we act as though we own the world, don't have a penny in our pockets, depending on our parents. Even those of us who may be working during that time period still feel, at least I know I felt, as though I owned the world. When Medgar Evers was assassinated, I remember how nervous and anxious I became, but I didn't understand how his assassination was making me feel so frightful, so fearful. I knew what happened. I knew why it happened. At least I knew the why that was being reported by the media. So when I think of how the media reported his assassination, his death, and all of the things that followed, it makes me think about how the media is reporting what's happening in America and in the world right now. Following Medgar Evers, there was President Kennedy. I remember I was home the day that he was assassinated. I was home ill, and I don't know what program I was watching on television, but they kept interrupting the program to show highlights of his trip in Dallas. And I said to my mother, the next thing they're going to say is that he's been killed. And I didn't know where that came from. And I was right. The next thing I heard, the next time they interrupted, he had been assassinated. It made me feel as though I had thrown out some negative vibes that were so strong. Somehow they joined all the other people out there who really wanted him dead. That wasn't what I felt. But the train of assassination just continued, because first there's Medgar, then there's President Kennedy, then Malcolm is assassinated my sophomore year of college. I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I so wanted to come home. What could I do? Very little. But his funeral and everything surrounding him at that time was being held blocks from where my mom lived at the time. And I just wanted to be there. But my mother was very much against my leaving school, so I didn't. But at that point, I think I was becoming depressed, but I didn't understand or know what depression really was. Having been raised both in Georgia and New York, almost simultaneously spending my academic part of the year in Georgia and my holidays and summers in New York. I never felt like a Georgian. I never felt like a New Yorker. I always describe it when people ask me about that time period in my life. I tell them I was an army brat, which of course wasn't true. Neither my mom or my father were in the army. However, there is an army base where I grew up. So I knew what army brats, army children were like. And because I was back and forth between the two states, it seemed easier for me to explain my childhood in that manner. I looked at my grandmother. I don't really know much about the rankings, but if the general is near the top, my grandmother was the general. My mother was whatever rank came below that. Definitely, I was a lowly private, no rights whatsoever. But that's the way it's supposed to be. You're the child, and your parent or whomever is your adult caretaker, the person providing the bread. Yet, the next thing I know, my senior year, I'm about to graduate, and Dr. King is assassinated. I lived off campus, and because I lived off campus in campus housing, I was at Howard at the time. The university wanted all of the students to come on campus because there was tremendous protest going on. Now, I share that because for Dr. King's um, birthday to sneak up on me, and then the assassination, for all that to come for this year, it made me realize that for once I had finally reached a point in my life where the trauma of all these assassinations so early in my life had kind of leveled off. Yet the moment I thought about Dr. King and I saw Bernice and her brother and her niece, and I thought about just the King family and what they've gone through, I became nervous as though this was happening all over again. It's amazing what the mind does. It both protects us and keeps tremendous trauma and horror from being so upfront in our brains that we react to it. But at the same time, it brought back memories of me standing in the middle of Florida Avenue in Georgia where they cross. If you're from the DC area, Maryland area, or Virginia, that tri-state area, and you know a little bit about the streets, both of those are large throughways in Washington D.C. and Howard is not far from there. But to be standing in the middle of the street and seeing people, they were called rioters, but as I have grown, I realized that they were protesting, perhaps not in the most productive way, because I watched them empty out an AMP, then I watched people empty out a liquor store and actually set the buildings on fire. And to stand, it was like watching a movie, standing and seeing a building begin to expand, and then a brick here, a brick there, and finally it's exploding. And my friends are calling, Mary, Mary, come on, come on. I couldn't move. And they're grabbing me. Eventually, of course, I did move, but I was just overwhelmed with shock about Dr. King's death, shock about the people and what they were doing. And the next day, there are the National Guard on every corner that I could see, even up as far, although the university was not that far from the White House or the downtown area or the areas where protesting was going on. It was close enough. And to just see the National Guard standing there. I had never seen anything like that in my life. Um, Prior to all of these assassinations, you had the March on Washington. I think that was the first time in my life I had seen. I did not go, but just watching it on television, seeing that many people gathered peacefully to protest the manner in which Blacks, brown people, marginalized people in this country were being treated. And fast forward 2 or 3 years to see how they were being reported on based on what was happening at that time as a result of the March on Washington, Medgar's assassination, President Kennedy, King, and then after King, Robert Kennedy. All of that between my 17th birthday and 21st birthday, they were not the only people who were killed. Many, many people died because of racism, because of white supremacy, because of white nationalism that was growing at that time. And I feel often in the last year, especially the last 6 to 9 months, I have felt often that things that happened during that part of my life are beginning to repeat themselves. We've had a lot of mass protests across the country because of the Supreme Court and the striking down of women's rights, voting rights, and other rights that are coming up. There have been and continues to be a lot of protests. We now have young people, not just now 2024, but it's increasing how our children, and when I say children, I'm talking about from pre-K all the way up through graduate school, regardless of age when it comes to college and graduate school, the opportunities that were there are still there, but not as visible because the Supreme Court has said that minorities, blacks in particular, we're getting more than we should have. That might not be the way it's worded, but that's the end result that I hear people talking about. And I've been writing our family history, and I finished the first draft. But as I went back and looked at what my grandmother, my grand aunts, my great grandmother experienced between 1854 and let's say 1954, I couldn't help but wonder, how did my grandmother feel? Born in 1900, but the vote for women in 1919. However, my grandmother didn't get to vote until 1965, on her way out of this world. But she was very active in her community in trying to get other Black women in particular registered to vote. Just the thought that I was able to vote when I graduated high school and my grandmother had not been able to vote. I didn't realize it in 1964, but as I'm writing this family history, I'm seeing all of the things that my grandmother, some of you, maybe not all of you, your grandmother or your great grandmother, and maybe even your parents, what they went through and what we continue to go to in fighting for civil rights. I read an article, I think it's been about a week or 2 weeks, about a town in Alabama. I don't remember the name of the town, but they haven't had voting or an election in 10 years. The majority of the town is Black. However, the whites in the town who rule the town decided that there weren't going to be any more elections. So there haven't been any elections. And the mayor and other non elected officials, but the mayor and the cohorts who work with the mayor have simply passed down leadership through the white families that are in charge and their friends. The Blacks in town have finally gone to court to try and get the courts to force equal rights, to force elections. I need to look up the town because I said I wanted to follow that case to see what happens. And then I've read about other towns currently, mostly in the South, where there's a big move to prevent Blacks and Latinos from voting, either through there may not be poll tax anymore, but literacy, by changing the times that people can go to school, changing and refusing to allow certain history to be taught. All of that just makes me feel like this is the time period that my grandmother lived through. And it's the time period that I lived through as well, but I've been more fortunate in that I was able to go to school. I've been able to follow my dreams for the most part, where there have been times when I couldn't do something that I wanted to. I didn't necessarily think it was because I was Black. Even if I knew that the color of my skin had something to do with the final decision, I didn't feel it in the way that my Southern counterparts probably felt it. New York is a liberal city, but there's a lot of racism in that liberalism. I've always known that. I've always seen that. They might let you into the restaurant, you get to eat, but they might sit you by the bathroom. If you don't say something, I'm not taking that table. No, you can't place me there. There's a lot of racism here as well. When I think about just all that I've experienced, it makes me sad because I've been fortunate. I didn't realize how fortunate I had been. I think I just took a lot of things for granted. Not for granted that other Blacks in the North weren't experiencing less than what I was experiencing, but life has been easier than I thought. Whenever I thought life was difficult for me, as I look back at my grandmother's life, at my mother's life, at the lives of some of your parents and grandparents, we are back, not yet, but white supremacy, white nationalism is trying to force us back into the 1950s. And if they could put us back into enslavement, they would. We talk about white Christianity. Look at how they protested the Black church's involvement in the civil rights movement. They protested it back in the 1960s, the 1950s. From the very beginning, they've protested the activities of the Black church when it came to education, civil rights, political rights, human rights, and they're still doing that. I may have rambled in this reliving of my experiences, my grandmother's experiences, my great grandmother's, but it's because I feel sometimes I tell myself that I feel lost. And I ask myself, well, Mary, if you feel lost with all this education that you have, what about the people who haven't had the opportunity even to graduate high school, because you have people like DeSantis, the Satan, and others whose names I don't know, but I know they exist, who've closed schools, who don't allow schools to reopen, who've closed literacy programs, who've closed all kinds of programs that were working to help all of us become more informed civically and more informed educationally. So I don't have the right to complain. I feel that I don't have the right to complain about anything that I don't get. But on the other hand, I feel that I must do everything I can to help push forward the rights of all of us. My health has not been that great. I'm grateful to still be here, to still be living independently and doing for myself. And it's sometimes extremely frustrating because I want to be out there doing a lot more, but I can't. So I have to try and do the things that I can do from my home, from my bird perch, and hope that those little contributions will touch one or two people, and those two people having more physical capability than I do can take that message and spread it further, and it becomes a ripple effect so that many more people who are in a position to be more physically active and get the message out that we must vote. The vote is critical, and we must continue to speak out, speak our truth. For some of us, we may get hurt in the process of doing that because there are still people who don't want us to speak out, who don't want us to vote, and will do anything and everything, including killing us, to keep that hidden. So, all of these assassinations that I spoke about, I gave names to those people, but we had many, many, many more who were assassinated, who lost their lives in this time period that allowed us, all of us in this space, to be where we are at this time, facing authoritarianism. And I want to say that I'm praying because that's not all that I can do, but prayer I think works. But prayer without action doesn't work. So, however much action I can do and you can do, we can stop the Orange Man and his cohorts and keep Biden and Harris in office so that we can, if there's a change in the Supreme Court, President Biden will be able to nominate someone and get that person into the Supreme Court. I think he should add, we need to add another seat and try to get another Democrat into the Supreme Court. I think I'll stop there with my rambling, and I hope that I was able to share some information that you didn't have. Just to share my experiences, and I'll ask you to forgive me if I leave. Because I am going to take my phone with me, but I do want to go outside and experience what for me is for all of us is a historic moment, but what for me is a historic moment because I'm in the path of the 90%. I have my glasses ready to cover both my phone because they say you shouldn't take pictures with your phone of the eclipse without covering the camera because cameras on the iPhone or on any phone that you have, cell phone, aren't strong enough. So I bought glasses for my phone as well as glasses for myself. And I'm happy that I am well enough today, strong enough to speak. My voice doesn't always allow me to speak, but I am present as often as I can be and I listen. And many of you who I won't call out names because I'll leave someone out, but I have learned so much from advocacy arena from many of you who are much more involved with the politics and the civics of our time. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to each of you. I am so proud of you. I am so proud of the information that you bring and that you contribute and that I have personally gained. One day I'll write an essay and post it, and I'll mention some names, and I will ask you in advance to forgive me if your name isn't mentioned, but certainly know that in my heart and in my mind you are mentioned because I can't think of one name that doesn't contribute to this space. Many of you don't speak every week because I don't speak every week, but I know from having been in the space since it started that this is a hot space. And with that, I'll just stop talking.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marshall. And I think it's important that we hear your stories of your lived experience because it's quite different than just, the historical dates and information that we may be given in a classroom, in a book. And I feel that so much of that is missing because one, history is being taken out of the curriculum of educational systems today, and also the narrative is being rewritten and changed, like slavery had benefits and those types of things. So I am honored that you shared with us today and shared with us in the way that you do because I think so many people. I had a conversation with some people. They were talking about how it's hard to believe that Ruby Bridges is like 70 years old now, and that, they were comparing her to, the ages of their grandparents or parents or whatever. And so that's part of my lived experience and history because I'm only 5 years younger than her. And I often say that, like, I was the Ruby Bridges of my small rural community, with the twist in that, there were other kids that were supposed to be joining her in desegregating the schools, but her the other kids' parents were too afraid and they didn't show up. I'm thankful that the other two kids who joined me in desegregating our town schools, their parents were brave and they did show up. It just so happened that both of them were children of two Black educators who were teachers in the Black school, but they sent their kids over to the white school. Now, of course, we were never in the same classroom together, but it did, I feel like, give us a sense of togetherness and support, knowing that we were in the school together. And so, we've come a long way, but we are at a time where a lot of people are trying to pull us so far back to um, obstacles and challenges that we faced and overcome, and they want to take us back. And I think it's important that we tell those stories and that people understand the danger and how these times that we're living in now, because the media doesn't do a great job of laying that historical groundwork and helping people to see. Like, they see the sensationalism of what is being done and what is being said, but they don't connect it to, like, this stuff is not new. It is not new. And so we can't treat it as if it's new. We can't treat it's as if it's normal. It's a new iteration of a very old story. And so I thank you for sharing yours. And we do have a few other speakers up, and I'm looking
I
forward to.
I just want to jump in for 1 second. I
Go
just want to
ahead.
say that, Dr. Marshall, I love that you're in here and putting the face of humanity on these stories. I listened to my mom for so many years that she was with me, and I wish I would have thought to record her. You always think you're going to have time. You're going to have time, and so a lot of your stories bring me back. And she had the experience of being in the South, growing up in the South, and then moving to the North during the height of the civil rights movement. And it's really important to remember that it wasn't that long ago, even though they often show the pictures in black and white. And my mother would often remind me that they had color film. She has color pictures, not of her marching or anything, but other family events around that time. And I remember when I was in college reading an essay, on journalism and why they chose to do it that way. It was a conscious choice. I think people really need to understand that it was a conscious choice to publish all of these pictures that we see from the civil rights era as in black and white, because it gave the illusion to the public. They knew what they were doing, that it had happened so much longer ago. It was to hide the shame of the sins of this country. And I think it's really, it has played on the psyche of people a lot, especially the apologists, and those that would try to diminish the experiences of our ancestors. And, for some of us, our ancestors, and for some of us, the lived experience of that time. And so it is rewarding to have you in here. as a witness to that history, because it is proof that it didn't happen centuries ago, when so many years that it's so far in our back in our past that we've progressed so much further, and I think that's really important. So I just want to thank you for always being willing to share your stories and your family stories and our history with us, many times in a witness form, whether that be the letters or the photos that you bring to life on your timeline, and your wisdom. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, seriously.
Well, thank you. I just want to, I'll make this really quick. It's an immigrant story. As I came from Georgia to New York to go to high school, they kept putting me in a general class, and my mom would have to come down to the school. So they'd put me back in the honors class because they considered my education in the South not acceptable, inferior. And that's the way we treat a lot of immigrants who come to this country. Come to this country, many of them with good education, good skills, and definitely intelligent minds. And when I say we, I'm talking about Americans in general. I don't want to be specific about groups, but we treat them as though they know nothing. And it's America that gives them everything. For some, that may be true, but education and voting are two of the strong um, aspects of America that we need to fight even harder for. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to just share my experiences.
Well, it is we that should be thanking you. And again, I say I'm honored that you take time out of your day when you do come in and share your story of how you were witness to those times. And those times were not that long ago. And so, sister, thank you for kind of highlighting how the media was intentional in the way that they depicted them. So I appreciate that. And up next, we've got Black STEM and then Mud Puppy, because I know we're going to get into some dark money connections to some of what's going on. And Greg, I see you are here, and so we'll go in that order. And I just want to thank you all for joining us in Advocacy Arena and participating in the conversation, whether you're actively speaking or you're just a listener, because I see you and I appreciate you coming and joining and listening. I see Mark is here, and I'm so glad to see him. And hopefully, he can come at some point and give us some updates on the legal status of things that are going on, because this all kind of ties in together. And I say that we are now in the judiciary phase of fascism, because the attack on our legal system and how the former guy is trying to use it to usurp the rule of law in so many ways. All of these things are connected, and we need to understand their connections. And I thank you all for helping us to weave these stories to establish the truthful narratives, because the media is not always great at doing that. So with that, we'll go to Black STEM, then Mud Puppy.
Hi Dee, hi Soul Sister, and hi.
Hello there. Check your mic. You just kind of faded out there for a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Okay.
I just was saying, my schedule now doesn't allow me to spend much time with you guys, but when I do, I really appreciate. I just wanted to let you guys know, Dee knows that I have taken on some new responsibilities in my community. Behind the scenes, she and I have traded some information. One of the things that I wanted to let you guys know is that I have been blessed with having recently been elected to run a large coalition here in my local region. It's a 432 member organization, and it's It includes also contacts with city government, state government, etc. So with that background, I just wanted to let you guys know about an incident that took place this past weekend with me and that coalition. I believe it was, or last Friday. I believe it was Thursday night. In the middle of the night, I received a text alert on my phone, and a news reporter sent me the headlines of a pretty interesting comment on a local Black organization. And the message was sent to me anonymous. The person used Snapchat, and I don't know how many of you use Snapchat, but I don't use Snapchat. I don't have Snapchat, but somehow this message came to me to my text on my phone from a Snapchat account, which was encrypted. And of course, I couldn't find the IP address on it or not. But bottom line, the text message was a link to a new article that had been written in my local area by a far-right conservative newspaper, accusing one of the member organizations that I now represent of illegal activities. To be more specific, they accused them. This organization is focused on helping underserved communities with getting home loans for affordable housing. And the far-right conservative newspaper went through all of their public records, this organization's public records from 1996 to 2023, counted up all of the federal grants that they had received, and then went and looked at how much they had donated money to different Congress people, local mayors, and to the White House, and then created a narrative that this organization was illegally using the federal money that they had gotten over these numerous years to, number one, restrict access of other financial institutions from helping these minority communities in my area. And then number two, of illegally using the money from federal grants to lobby government officials. This message came to me at 3:03 in the morning. And I got no sleep from that point forward. I had to get on the, literally, I had no sleep for about 24 hours. I had to literally get on the phone once daylight hit. First, I spent time trying to understand, is this a real thing that's happening? Is this a real article? What's going on here? Who sent this to me? Why did they send this to me? What are they trying to say? Number two, then I had to sit down and think about, okay, the organization that they're talking about, what do I know about them? Because I'm still new in this role. What do I know about them? What do the other leaders know about them? And then once daylight hit, I had to start manning the phones, calling people, trying to find out, do you know what this is about? Do you know if this is true? What do we say as an organization? Do we say anything as an organization? Do we stay quiet? Do we talk to the partner, et cetera, et cetera? And as the morning went, this message, apparently whoever sent this had sent it to numerous people, top leaders in my region, and everybody was asking the question, what's going on? Because I had done most of the homework on what was happening with this situation, I sent out a massive email letting people know what little I knew about what was happening here. And surprisingly, everybody calmed down. Everybody said that my email explaining, number one, what this message was. Number two, was it true? Was it verified? Number three, what was it actually trying to say? Who was the group that put this out? And then number four, what we as a collective body should do in response. And bottom line is that everybody united around the decision that we're not going to let this far-right organization try to tear our coalition apart. None of us are going to remotely even state any comment about what may or may not be true in this situation because we don't know. We decided we will lend support to the organization that was attacked until we know something differently, and that we will do everything in our power to try to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We're going into our database systems that we use. We're going to make sure the cybersecurity is increased so that no one can get to our phone numbers again and can make this happen again. It was a major learning lesson for me, and you guys know that I come in here most of the time when I have experienced something or have heard something to try to give warning to everybody else. So I just want to warn you that these conservatives, the far right conservatives, are coming after everybody, and they're using all sorts of tools to try to break us apart. Don't let them do that. And be aware that you could be targeted next. Coming out of that situation, I learned, number one, the most important thing is to remain calm.
Hey, Cynthia, I'm sorry, like you're getting a little garbly. The last clear thing I heard was to remain calm.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes, you're good.
Okay. I'll wrap it up by saying that I learned a few lessons. The first lesson is to remain calm when you're attacked like this. Fear and confusion is a tool that they use against us. Don't allow that fear and confusion to make you do something impulsive that will make the problem worse and not better. Number two, verify, verify, verify. Before you take any action, verify whatever is coming at you, be it misinformation, be it people who are upset, whatever. Before you react, stay calm and verify whatever is being presented in front of you. And then number three is to communicate with others so that you can collectively decide what actions you want to take. And then number four, reinforce amongst everyone that's involved that we will stand united, we will not be divided, and that these forces, these dark forces that are coming at us will not succeed. So I just wanted to share that. That's a real-time experience that I just had, 2 days ago, 3 days ago? And again, I'm just new in this role. I have not sought public publicity around what I do. I've tried to stay under the radar because I want to be an effective leader. I'm not interested in being in the news, getting accolades, empty accolades for work that doesn't mean anything. But somehow they found me, and somehow they made my life for 24 hours quite difficult. And I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I think my organization now is stronger as a result of what we just went through. And they actually helped me because now the organization, the feedback I got was that a lot of people are now that I was selected to be the leader of the coalition. And I strengthened the leader, strengthened the organization.
Okay, you're getting garbly again, but I do thank you for coming in to share that experience, and it's just another example of how we again have to stay on our toes. So I'm gonna give you a chance to wrap up while your mic is maybe still effective there. Can you hear us? I think Elon is messing with us again today. Are you there, Black Stem? Okay, we may have lost her. What I want to say is the whole time that you were explaining and talking about this, it made me think of what they did to Martin Luther King. I just rewatched the last few episodes of Genius, MLK, and X. And they use these tools and things on him. I mean, we had the FBI, a department of the State Department. Okay, she's back. So,
Can you
but
hear me now?
yes, much better. Yes.
I think somebody must be attacking what I'm telling you guys, because I've never had this kind of problem before. So I'm going to end it right here and let D take back control. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I agree that is happening. And I feel, like I said, when you were describing that instance, it made me think of the things that they did to MLK, and how they were trying to stop these movements. And to also remind people, I'm glad Mud Puppy is next, because I want to remind people that the Conservative Partnership Institute, one that, what's his name, Mark Meadows is in charge of now, that was started by Jim DeMint, that they have a huge organization in Washington, and they have a just a department, I'm going to call it, that is dedicated to opposition research. And I feel like this is what has taken place with your organization. And also, it couples with the assault on DEI. Any types of organization or work that is being done around there, they are trying to attack it. And so then what they do is they start investigating and researching ways to shed, to disparage
Yeah.
the
And dismantle the
organization.
programs. Yeah.
Exactly. So I appreciate that you were able to add into this conversation the acts that you took to combat it, and I think that we can all learn from that, and we should not be afraid. It should just give us more strength and fortitude to know that, one, we're doing something that's important, that matters. Otherwise, they would not be attacking it, which is what is happening in this space right now. I am always heartened. It's annoying, but again, my say, we will not be deterred. How they try to come after this space, and if they can't do the space, because I have some great cybersecurity guards who help to make sure that it is not taken down, they do often attack voices and members and contributors to the space. So I thank you for your strength. I thank you for what you have shared and the example that you continue to set. And I am wishing you well in your leadership role in this organization and the work that you're doing. And you and I will be talking further in the near future. And I just hope that you have a great rest of the day. And again, so grateful that you came to share this story, because I think it's a perfect example of what we're up against, and it's also a perfect example of the past being prologue. Like, they don't invent new wheels. They just take out the old wheels and dust them off and use them. And they use them because they know they work. And what is going on now is something that they tried in the past. And so that is why I continue. I know it is not always sexy conversation. It is not always sensationalism. But what I try to do here in this space and in our time is to lay down facts and information and tools and resources and examples that we can use in our fight here today. So I just want to thank all of you who have contributed to the conversation thus far. And we're going to go next to Mud Puppy, and we'll be talking a little bit about the people who are funding these efforts. So, Mud Puppy, my dear, thank you for coming and joining us today and sharing. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And you and I are also going to be installing another episode of our Dark Money Deep Dive. So, you have the floor, my dear.
Well, hello, Miss D. Hello, Miss Soul Sister, and everybody else in the room. Hope you're having a great Monday. I am still waking up. I'm still waiting for my coffee to hit the bloodstream. But yeah, hope everybody's doing well. I actually wanted to open with a tweet that I shared in the nest. I believe it's the third tweet. I had been over at my parents' house dog sitting, and my mom, when they got back, came over to me and said, "Hey, I meant to show this to you. I got this mailer from Hillsdale College, and it hadn't been opened yet." So I just flipped to a random page, and this is what it read. So As for interracial violence, blacks are a greater threat to whites than whites are to blacks. Blacks commit 85% of all non-lethal interracial violence between blacks and whites. A black person is 35 times more likely to commit an act of non-lethal violence against a white person than vice versa. And I can't believe I'm reading that in 2024, but here we are.
From an organization that has the agenda of establishing charter schools throughout my state and really throughout the nation. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I had quite a few people from Tennessee retweet that because I wasn't aware that, is it Governor Bill Lee is
Hmm.
in cahoots with them?
Yes. So yeah, and I retweeted it. I saw because I had been doing some research into them because 2 years ago he, in his State of the Union address, he announced a partnership with Hillsdale. In establishing the charter schools, and then they started with 3 regions, and this year the fight is he's trying to take it statewide. And so this is what they want to replace our, I'm not saying our public education system and our schools are stellar, not all of them, but they want to replace it with this. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah, eh, it goes along perfectly with this conversation, with school choice and vouchers. I mean, really, it's just another way to discriminate against Black and Brown people, if we had to keep it 100. So, yeah, I found that to be just my blood was boiling, and I couldn't not post it. But then I saw the retweets from, the right wingers who were basically using whatever was written in that pamphlet as, the word of God, essentially. No facts or sources were posted, and they were reposting it, claiming it to be true, and it's not, and it's also very extremely racist. And it just blows my mind that people are unable, well, white people, I should say, are unable to identify, what racism looks like. And it's literally in writing. So, yeah. What else? I think like a month or two ago, I had done a deep dive on some of the lawyers who had filed amicus briefs in the Supreme Court for the affirmative action case. And basically, what I found was 76% of those lawyers, and let me caveat this, there can be multiple lawyers listed on one amicus brief. So anyway, I ran all of those names through the Federalist Society's website, and 76% of them were members of the Federalist Society. Those who were seeking to overturn affirmative action, which is what ended up happening. So that is the organization where Leonard Leo was, I believe, the executive vice president of the Federalist Society before he went over to CRC Advisors, which is a right-wing PR firm.
Well, yeah, he actually created that. That's his firm, the CRC is. Yeah. And so he branched out onto his into with his own company or and nonprofit in CRC.
Yeah, I thought it had been started by someone named Leif Noren, because I did see a creative response concepts, which is what CRC Advisors basically stands for. They had filed with FARA because they were doing something with, some Ukrainian, I think it was Yanukovych. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But anyway, that was in
Yes,
like
that's correct. Yeah, and you
2005.
may, yes, and you may be correct. I think that maybe he got in charge when he got that money from Say,
Yeah.
and so the organization took on new money, new blood, and new agenda.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing is, you know, it's kind of hard to keep track of all of these groups that, the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation and all of the groups who are involved with Project 2025. If you know Leonard Leo, he basically creates a bunch of front groups that tie to, and I should probably put up I've got a little chart of this, but basically there's like one big group, and then underneath that are all of these fictitious names, so it causes confusion for the public unless you go to the Secretary of State's website to figure out, who kind of runs what, to tie it back to, well, I tie it back to Leonard Leo, but, you can tie it back to whoever you want. But, a lot of those groups are involved with, the dark money stuff, and pushing for racist policies, transphobic policies, anything under the sun, essentially, that is awful for society. These people are pushing. But yeah, so going back to the affirmative action case for a second. So I went through those lawyers, found 76% were with the Federalist Society. So now what I'm doing is I'm going through all of the Trump appointed federal judges. Well, Trump in quotes, because Leonard Leo is really the one who appointed them. And I believe they also have lifetime appointments. And please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I did read that. So a lot of them, are younger. So that is concerning. I haven't reviewed all of them. There's about 224, and I've gone through like 100 and maybe 50 so far. But what I'm finding is that, let's see, 62% of 150 reviewed come from the Federalist Society or have ties to the Federalist Society. 74% are men, and 88% are white. Well, yeah, no, white. And there's one or two that are, white and possibly Latino. So that in itself is really scary because, these are the people who have ties to Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society, and, they want to preserve their little white babies. And we shouldn't be cool with that because it's, I
No,
don't know. I don't know how to put that into
no,
words, but it's
I
just
understand.
insanity.
It really is. And we need to understand. I think it's a good time, too, to talk about how, these billionaires are funding the former guy's campaign in hopes of getting, fewer taxes and less regulations, and how again, going back to the title, past is prologue, these are the same things that the billionaires during the rise of fascism in Italy and in Germany and likely Spain, but I haven't studied as much about Franco as I have, Mussolini and Hitler, but they are willing to do away with democracy. And so basically what is happening here is that they are using their money to front campaigns, candidates, so that they can install them to get their wishes fulfilled, and it's okay with them if they are not done in a free and fair democracy. In fact, you know, they're down with that. And what disturbs me is that a lot of their base and even some young folks on the extreme left are kind of buying into this propaganda and ideology that they are pushing, because I'm telling you, I'm hearing more and more young Black people talking about, oh, dictators aren't so bad. Talking about the things that are going on down in Haiti, and talking about the good times with Papa Doc. That's very, very disturbing. And what some of the folks who are doing a good job with their duties as media and press, they are starting to call this out, to talk about it is not normal, but a great many of them are kind of just breezing over, that part. Like it's just normal, and it is not normal. We have people who were insurrectionists being called hostages. And there are a lot of them who are now running for office. In fact, one of them in Oklahoma, I put a story in the Nest, and it's on my timeline. This was not the January 6th, but this goes back to the incident that caused President Biden to run the Charlottesville, Virginia march with the neo Nazis. One of the guys who was very prominent in that actually ran for office in Oklahoma for city council, and because it wasn't getting a lot of press or what, he won. And some ladies who were just kind of searching, I think, in Facebook, realized who he was and what he had done, and they went about finding a campaign to starting a campaign to let people know, to get him ousted, and they were very successful with that. So I am very thankful that they were, and we're going to have more activities like this over and over again, because it cannot be normalized, because these things are not normal, and they are very imminent dangers to our democracy. So, did you want to add anything further to that, Mud Puppy? And yes, in our next conversation, we can talk about Hillsdale, because I studied a lot about them when our governor decided that he was going to partner with them. And Betsy DeVos came down here, and while they talked about the number of charter schools that they were going to put here, she added the fact that she wanted so many of them to be religious schools. And they took on the curriculum of 1776, which was just the backlash to the 1619 project, and also infusing religious ideology into that curriculum. And yet they are the ones saying that we are indoctrinating kids. But, they want to infuse their religious beliefs, and this ties back into the white nationalism and all of these things as well. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, and just to add on to that, when I was doing my research on the ties between the US Christian right and the Russians,
Mm-hmm.
school choice is something that they were pushing for in Russia as well, because they are very much aligned with the Christian fascists in the US. And I even saw there's a guy, his name is Alexei Komov. He is close to a Russian oligarch, and was meeting and did a video with Michael Ferris, who was over Alliance Defending Freedom. And you guys may know who that is, because they are the group that helped overturn Roe. And they're currently trying to overturn mifepristone. So Michael Ferris also has an organization called, I believe it's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, something like that. But anyway, just going back to the school choice, it's definitely like, I mean, with through the World Congress of Families, which is like the conference that I was researching, there's a lot of similarities, and definitely a lot of ties to the Russians and the U.S. Christian right. And I'll throw up my my very chaotic map of that.
Thank you so much for, like I said, the continual work that you are doing on that. And we will continue working together and talking about it to educate people because they have these networks and vast infrastructures. And in order for us to combat it, first of all, we have to be aware of it. And the second part of that is we have to build infrastructures of democracy and conversations around it. So the work that you're doing is so essential. So keep up the great work, my dear, and stick around and you can join in later in the conversation if you would like. We're going to go next to Greg, and then I see one of my friends in here. I'm so glad to have him. High five. And then Jima and Susan. So, Greg, how are you today?
Hi, Misty. I'm doing pretty good, actually. It is great to be in here. Great to hear so many people talk. Great to see you, Soul Sister, Mud Puppy, LMG, everybody here. I was listening as I came in to what the Marshall Collection had really had said, and it was great to hear some of her experiences of some of those times in history, times before my birth. And if you really sit back and you really hear that stuff, if you hear a personal view from somebody who has actually been there through some of these issues, something a history book could never teach you. It's really a teachable moment, and those are moments that I like to have because I learn from that. I learn some of the experiences people have gone through, whether they're good or bad, and it teaches me to try to be a little bit better, and change my perspective on things I didn't know before as to what I have just learned. And I really took to heart what the Marshall Collection just said earlier. And
Dr. Marshall. You can call her Dr.
yeah,
Marshall.
yeah. She touched a base with a lot of things, and these all were before my time. I wasn't born. I was born after Dr. King was killed and all that stuff. And hearing what she had to say really touched base with me. I like to hear from people who have been there through some of these situations, and it helps me to understand history a little bit better.
And that's why I always try to invite her in and have her, tell these stories because she bore witness to many of these things. And I think it's important, especially with the assault on education that we are experiencing.
Yeah,
There will be a whole generation of kids who, first of all, will not get accurate history, and then they will not believe that people actually lived through these kinds of things. I think you may remember that during Black History Month, I had Dr. Williams in from a history professor from TSU, and he posted just a little 1 minute clip on his timeline. I think it may have been Friday or sometime like that, and he had interviewed another gentleman who was part of the civil rights movement, and he was actually I can't remember. He was abroad doing some of that work, learning, and had was just returning to the United States, actually flying in to Washington on the eve of Martin Luther King's assassination. And so he was describing, what he experienced, much like Dr. Marshall was describing what her experience like. Now, she was a young college student. He was an older gentleman, I think maybe even a professor himself. But he was talking about what it looked like flying into Washington with all of the chaos that had ensued. He talked about how difficult it was for him to get a flight from Washington to Nashville, and then once he did, there was no. At that time, they were taking taxis, and so he could not get a taxi to his home, and they were contacting people in the area so that he was able to get picked up at the airport and taken to another place. And then the people there actually, after a while, took him to his home. So, again, lived real experiences that are not often told, but
Right.
we need to think about. So I'm glad, and I will pass on to Dr. Marshall because she dropped out for a little while to take advantage of the eclipse, which, as she said, Dr. Marshall is in her late 70s, and it's likely to be the last one that she experiences. But I
I,
experience.
I think we're experiencing it right now here in Milwaukee. Yes, we are. Actually, but I'm not looking up at I'm not going to be looking up.
All right,
But we are
Greg.
experiencing it right now. But what she
Okay.
had to say was very, very important. It's like I said, it's a very teachable moment, and it's something you just cannot get out of a history book. It's a very important thing to hear from people who have lived through those experiences, and I hope
Yeah.
she's feeling better soon.
All right. Well, I will pass that along to her. And again, thank you so much for coming and joining us here in this space. So, up next, we've got Jima Riri, then Susan, and then Hi Fi.
Good afternoon, Missy and Soul Sister. Thank you for the space. Unfortunately, I've missed the last few weeks. I was babysitting and we found someone to help out so I don't have to do it 4 days a week anymore.
I understand those
Yeah.
Nana duties can be quite consuming at times. So I
Yeah, and it's
feel
an
you.
hour drive there and back. So yeah, it's nice to cut those days down. I love them, but it is a lot. I want to shout out to Black Stem. That was really great advice that you gave us. Do not panic. Do not react emotionally. Process. Dig into the information. Make sure that the information is correct. See where it came from. That can be very difficult to do in this day and time, and I really want to thank you for sharing that because that's an important tool to remember. Our democracy is absolutely being destroyed. Miss D, the state of Tennessee frightens. And I thank God that you're there and you're one of the people who are teaching us, all of us in this coalition, about just how fragile democracy is and the unlawful things that are happening because of your governor and the GOP being in charge there is absolutely frightening. I'm in Illinois, so I can only imagine this has got to be 1,000 times worse for you, but yet you show up every day and doing the work. You are absolutely an inspiration. Solstice, you too are an inspiration. There is nobody that knows more about this than you do. And the fight to keep us unionized and the benefits of that. You have taught me a lot too, because again, I didn't know all of that information. So I wanted to thank you. Mud Puppy, you are phenomenal at gathering about dark money. These are questions I've had for a long time, and you are so intricate, and I can't applaud you enough for the work that you're doing to help all of us. I wouldn't know this information had I not been in this coalition for the last couple of learning all of this. With that being said, the last thing I just want to say, and shout out to the rest of you in here that I absolutely love and adore too. You've all taught me things. But the one thing I just want to say again is I think it's really important that we all take an opportunity to adopt a candidate from another state. Whether you give $5, $10. I think it's really important. Democracy is very fragile right now. We have red states doing dirty things. We have candidates that need that money. I personally had chosen Angela Alsobrook and have been donating to her campaign. As it goes along, I will add someone else. I'm not rich, I'm not wealthy, but I can't afford to not get Starbucks twice a week and give that $20 to today. So, however, we got to do it. I just would encourage everyone, please adopt a candidate that really needs our help because we're all in this together. Thank
Jima Riri, it is good to hear your voice, my dear. And I appreciate because that was on the agenda for today to actually highlight the candidates that, we have hosted here in Advocacy Arena and encourage people to support them, but also to let us know about other great ones that you have discovered and to, as you say, find candidates candidates, those people who are brave and courageous enough to throw their hats in the ring, to represent us and to uphold democracy. At the very least, as you say, I am not a rich woman, but it doesn't cost anything to retweet to help amplify their messages. But a dollar here, a couple of dollars there, it goes a long way, and it is not easy to first of all, to run for office, but it takes a lot of resources. And of course, you know that now I am part of Blue Tennessee, and I am so grateful that I found that organization, and we are working really, really hard to help amplify those courageous souls who have decided to run. And I think we're doing pretty good at making sure there are no uncontested races here. And in fact, it's a great time to remind folks that we will be having our first member meeting as an official chapter of Every State Blue on the 11th. And I will be posting it on the timeline so that you guys can join us. And in that, we will be hosting candidates who are running so you can learn a little bit more about them. And also other speakers and guests who can help provide resources to them and information. So I will make sure that I get that posted so you guys are aware of that. And I do hope that you can join us. It will be an evening virtual meeting. And one of the first guests that we will have in our meeting will be a candidate who comes in here. He's never spoken, but I have shouted him out, and that's Brian Robinson. I just discovered another one. And both of these guys, Brian is running against the Republican in from my old hometown for the House seat. And then there is another gentleman, Walter, who is running against the Republican for the Senate seat from my hometown. And so it is very important that we support these candidates as well, because as you said, Chima Riri, we have extremists here. And I posted an article from The Guardian and then from Dean Obadiah as well about the extremism that we're facing and the change that has taken. Like here in Tennessee, we have had Republican governors, we have had Republican representatives, but they were like the normie ones. Like they believed in, you know, like certain policies and were willing to sit down to have conversations, to negotiate, to compromise, to just get to the best solution for the majority. But this is not what we're dealing with now. What we're dealing with is a captured state house and governorship intent on a very, very aggressive authoritarian agenda, rolling back laws. Actually, the city of Memphis passed an ordinance after the Tyree Nichols murder that had some stipulation around police stops. And so they're not content on passing laws for the state, but now they're meddling in what cities do and undo. They passed a bill to undo the ordinance. Last year, I talked about it in space. We had after some horrendous police abuses here, we established a coalition, a body, an oversight commission, and they basically defanged that commission. They just stopped short of, disbanding it. So it's really, really important. And yes, some days it's very hard and depressing to live here, but I will not lay down. I know what my ancestors and people like Dr. Marshall faced and overcame. And my feeling is if they could, we can, and at least we're going to go down fighting. But I don't believe that we will, because I do think that what we're facing is a minority, a very loud and violent minority. But I think that I'm still feeling very optimistic, but I know we have a lot of obstacles. So that's why, we come here every Monday and have the conversation. So, first of all, we're made aware of the obstacles and we can start to plan and strategize, like Black STEM gave us some great tips. And so that's one of the things that I try to remind people is I don't go into the sensationalism. I don't get emotional, and I try not to rage tweet and these things. I try to stay focused because I feel like when we're able to do that, we can be more effective, because that's where they want us, in that emotional state. Because we don't always think at our best when we're responding from that emotional state. So even though some of this stuff makes me very angry, I try not to act and speak in that stage of anger. I just breathe and think about what the issue is and what the best strategy is. And that's what we're going to have to do. They have a huge infrastructure of anti democratic organizations, and we are just going to have to, through sheer people power, our citizen engagement, build our own infrastructure of democracy warriors. And I thank you guys for being a great part of that, because I feel like we have established that. We've already put our stake in the ground. We're here, we're not going anywhere, and we won't be deterred. So thank you again, Jima Riri. And up next, we've got Susan, and then Hi Fi.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
I can, and so glad you came up to speak. I know you're always here, but you have
Yes.
very rarely spoken. So I'm so glad you joined the
And
conversation
but I'm
today.
a little, it always makes me nervous to speak, even though I cannot see you guys, but I'm not a very effective speaker, I guess. But I will try my best.
Just speak from your heart, darling. It's
I,
okay. You know you're amongst friends.
I want to thank you for the space too, and I wanted to showcase the impact it has on cause. Last week, I work from home, so I have the fortune to be able to listen to a lot of stuff while I'm working, and I listen to C-SPAN a lot because I feel like it gives me kind of insight in how the average Americans, think these days. So last Wednesday, they had this guy on C-SPAN his name is Wade Miller. I've made some notes so I can speak better about it. So his name was Wade Miller, and he is from a group, Citizens for Renewing America. He was the executive director. So as soon as I heard the name, how they announced the group, I'm like, made the association Mud Puppy, Project 2025. So I Googled the Citizens for Renewing America, and then I saw what it's about. I saw they have Jeffrey Clark on their staff list. So I had already in my mind a question for him about Jeffrey Clark, why he's on their list, somebody who's actively involved in a coup. So I called in, and they actually took my call. And I was on the line and waited for a while, so I listened to the other people who called in. There was another lady who called him out on Jeffrey Clark. So I told him when it was my turn that, I can let go of that question, but I wanted to ask him. I asked him, are you involved or part of Project 2025? And he said, yes. And the way he described it, because the way he gave information about his whole organization, that's what's so dangerous. They really normalize, like what we talked about here earlier. They normalize everything. Like he was talking really calmly about how there is no systemic racism, that especially because there's DEI requirements in the government, we don't have to worry about race anymore. Then he spouted a bunch of election lies, like that he doesn't feel that our elections are really safe. A lot of things like that. So, and it seems like all these vague statements, they try to think that will make people think, oh yeah, there's something to it. The way they talk about it, he wasn't very
Yes, they're very good at they're very good at that. Even naming their organizations, they sound so benevolent and benign, like Americans for Prosperity. Well, who wouldn't be for that? But when you figure out that it's the Kochs and what they do and their agenda, it's a whole different story.
So the good news I have to share about that was because I listened to the other calls too, and the majority of callers, and they were from the GOP, Democratic, and Independent lines, they called in, and most folks really saw right through him. So that's what gives me a little bit hope. But I also think it's important that people like myself and average Americans call in and call these people out. Because I told him, like with Project 2025, we talked about it shortly, or he answered, and then I told him about racism, how he could make a statement like that, when there's still so much injustice and inequality happening.
Especially when Mud Puppy just read from the brochure of Hillsdale College, which is seeking to be the national charter, charter school example.
I mean, it's just, but anyhow, I was positively surprised how many people called in and knew what was going on. And then the next day, I listened in to C-SPAN again, and they had a libertarian on there, and that was, you just spoke earlier about our educational system. And this lady, I don't know how many times she repeated that, oh, our public school system needs to be dismantled. This is not worth spending our tax dollars on. I mean, it's crazy. And I questioning C-SPAN at times why they have so many of these crazies on and let them just talk. I mean, I know they try to have an even playing field, but right now I feel it's very dangerous without any pushback from the moderators I don't know. So that's why as a caller, I feel like, or listener, I try to call in and, get some points across. But that's what I wanted to share with you guys. And I really appreciate all of you. I love the space and I listen in whenever I can. Sometimes I have to step out meetings or workload is too busy, but I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Well, Susan, thank you. And I am so overjoyed that you came in and you actually spoke and shared today. And what a wonderful experience for you to share. And this is why I am always harping on citizen engagement, because this is what it means to be engaged and to be aware. Like it's small, it's little steps and things that each of us can take in our lives, in our real lived lives. And I am a big C-SPAN watcher. I'm not watching it as much as I used to, but you're right. I don't know why they platform so many of them, but they do have the three different lines. So at least you were added to the conversation to dispel the lies that he was trying to establish. So if people are listening and applying some critical thinking, at least we don't see the floor to their lies and their propaganda, because they are very good at it. And I just applaud you for taking on that citizen action and doing that. So proud of you. And thank you for sharing
Oh
it
my
with
God.
us. Go ahead, Mud
I
Puppy.
just wanted I just wanted to let Susan know that my heart just skipped a beat. That made me so happy. First of all, that you have been paying attention and you are so interested in this, because I see you retweet me all the time and I so appreciate it. But the fact that you actually called into C-SPAN, like, oh my God, more power to you. That's awesome.
Absolutely, and I love to hear people share these stories here in the conversation, because I hope that her bravery inspires others. And it takes all of us. Our democracy is only as strong as our participation in it, and a lot of the media is complicit in this, and so we have to call them out as well. And if when we can't call them out, at least make others aware of their complicity, because they want to treat things as normal. They want to both side things, and this is not normal. This is not a normal election. The period that we're living in is not normal, and they need to be speaking more to what's at stake and why, and what we can do about it. So our efforts, our small efforts, do matter. So kudos to you. Up next, we've got Hi-Fi and then Joseph.
Well, hello. Great to run into you on this hellhole of a platform.
I know for a minute there, I was like, oh, who is this? They have no followers. And then I was like, hi, okay, I know who this.
I was like, who are you letting up? Oh my
So,
Yes,
for
gosh.
those in the audience,
Hi-Fi is a battler, a MAGA battler. So he goes through, I don't know how many accounts.
I've been banned well over 100 times by now.
Okay. But he is a friend for sure.
I just followed him because I was like, okay, once Dee explained it to me, but I was like, who is this person?
But here's the
Well, I
thing.
appreciate the follow, but I expect this account will be gone in the next 24 to 72 hours.
But hi-fi is
Because
always in the
I am
name.
very dangerous.
Yes, hi-fi is always in the name. So that's a clue right there. You'll know.
All right, sorry, my neighbor was hollering at me. I just want to let everyone know I just full eclipse. It went completely dark here, and I have not been raptured. Unfortunately, I was hoping, but no such luck. So
Aw,
anyway,
too bad.
we can dispel all those, right? But there is a new conspiracy out, and I think ultimately this conspiracy leads to the root of a lot of the problems we're undergoing right now. We are in an all hands on deck situation, right? We have billionaires across the board. Everywhere you turn around, there's another billionaire buying up a politician, paying for Trump's fine. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough is the fact that it was the billionaire that built these platforms like Facebook and
The
Twitter.
tech bros. Mm-hmm.
The tech bros, specifically Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, who runs this $44 billion PSYOP cannon. People are like, oh no, he bought it to make money. He's burned 71% of the value. Don't tell me he bought this place to make money. That's a lie. He bought it to fuck with our head. Period. All right, so we know we got billionaires coming at us sideways. As a matter of fact, there's a new billionaire project that just hit Netflix I'd kind of like to warn people about. It's called the Anti-Social Network. And in there, you will have a bunch of LARPers and liars, 4chaners from way back in the day when I was a young man on the internet. We're talking 95, 96. And then in 2004 and 2005, when 4chan came around, you'll hear the names Aubrey Cottle or Kurtner. You'll hear the name Fred Brennan. They are lying about the origin of QAnon. They are lying about the origins of Q. By all means, watch it. Become familiar with the characters because those characters will become important later on. But ultimately, QAnon was an Americanized Christian ISIS that was started possibly by some of these 4chaners. We know that James Brower, a 4chaner, was dropping some of the original Q drop. However, this is ultimately a psychological operation perpetuated by Lieutenant General retired Michael Flynn and billionaire Peter Thiel to radicalize Americans. It started as Q and QAnon. It became the big lie, and now it is basically MAGA and the entire GOP have been turned into a theocratic, fascist, radicalized death cult. I do expect there to be violence. I think we all need to steel ourselves for that. There will be small actors across the country who will perpetuate acts of violence. We already have them, right? I mean, our shootings, we know our school shootings, a lot of them tie back to 4chan and 8chan and Gab and Telegram. Our government does nothing to protect our people from these platforms. Our government does nothing to protect our people from the misuse of our medical data. There is a large amount of data on every person on these platforms out there. If you've ever talked about going to therapy, if you've ever talked about a prescription, or if you've ever talked about feeling depressed or grief stricken, or after a break, that information is stored and you become a target. And if you don't believe me, there are movies out there. One is called The Great Hack. It's about how Cambridge Analytica, funded by Robert Mercer, with assistance from Peter Thiel, Palin scraped the data for 280 million Americans off of Facebook. I want you to think about that. Everything you posted on Facebook is now in the hands of a person who does not wish you well. Keep that in mind when you use social media, please. We can talk about Twitter and Elon Musk. There's been multiple hacks. We know that there's a company out there called Data Miner who had access to all of our emails, all of our information, everything that could doc. We know that there are companies, one specifically was called New Knowledge, and then it was changed to Yonder. Now it is called Primer AI. See, they play the shell game with their little companies and their operatives. They move things around, right? But if you look up Project Birmingham and Reid Hoffman, also another operative, also another billionaire, you will see that they were using social media to alter people's perceptions of their political environment. They are assaulting our information sphere and inserting disinformation and lies. They are specifically targeting people based on vulnerabilities such as mental health, relationship status, financial health. There's another movie out there you can watch. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. It's called Data and Disinformation Investigating Cambridge Analytica. And that was done by two people you can find on this platform, Dr. Charles Creel and Kat Gellin. I run a small podcast. I put it up in the nest. As a matter of fact, Dee was a guest. Full disclosure, Dee was a guest on our podcast. What was that, last week or the week
It's a
before?
couple of
I
weeks
forget. It's
ago.
a blur. Yeah, okay, a couple weeks. We've interviewed the filmmakers, Charles, Kat. interviewed some of their researchers, Dr. Emma Bryant. If you have a chance, go check out propagandamachine.tech, and you can see how social media has been used across the world to sway election outcome by people like Modi in India. They did it in the Dominican Republic. We know Brexit was a Cambridge Analytica operation. Alexander Nix is no longer allowed to run a company for the next, I think he's got 5 years left on, right? There are other films out there you can watch. If you want to read books, read Craig Unger, American Compromat. It talks about how Donald Trump has basically been a Russian money launderer and asset since the early 80s. Why do you think they found so many Russians in his condo, right? I have to admit, Russia, Russia, Russia was the greatest bit of propaganda he ever put out. But now I think people are seeing it more. We're seeing Russian networks disassembled in Europe. If you want to do a Google search for Chechnya and Russian network, you'll find that the Czech Republic just dismantled an influence network and a financial network that was paying European politicians to push pro-Russian propaganda. Paying politicians to push pro-Russian propaganda. You don't think anything like that could happen here, do you? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So anyway, there's a whole big bunch of propaganda out there. The billionaires are coming for us. If there was ever a time for all of us, black, white, male, female, to stand together, now's the freaking time. And local action. Find a local politician. Make friends with your council people. And another thing, it doesn't cost that much money to print off 5 or 6 pages in black and white. Putin owns Trump in big letters, and go staple them to a phone pole, tape them to a tree where people drive by. If you can't kick out $5 to the politician of your choice, that's cool. Go to the library and spend 50 cents and make some photocopies. Just leave them on tables. Make sure people know what's going on.
Small acts of resistance, they matter.
And that's about all I got for right now. Thank you, Dee.
Oh, thank you, Hi-Fi. You have enriched this conversation so much today, and I am glad that you joined us. And I, again, want to thank you and Heidi for interviewing me. And yes, you said you put the podcast up in the nest. So you guys should follow them. They always interview really, really great people, international. As well as national focus, because, as I often say, this push toward authoritarianism is just not here in America. It's a global issue. It's a global issue. So, again, Hi-Fi, such great information and resources. You guys do check them out. And I'm happy that you were able to participate in the conversation today. So, thank you again so very much. And up next, we've got Joseph and then Wilson.
Thanks, Ms. D. I kind of wanted to provide some insight on something that you said earlier. So I wanted just to give a little information on that. When we're talking about some dictatorships throughout history, I wanted to talk a little bit about Franco, Spain, just because I know a little bit about what went on during Spain, during his rule of Spain, which lasted for
Oh,
30.
wonderful! Because like I said, I have studied Mussolini and Hitler quite a bit. Not so much Franco, but I know there are similarities in between them all. So great.
Yeah, so Franco ruled Spain for 36, and I'm very surprised that actually that Spain was not ostracized from the international community as a whole. Franco came to power as a result of the Spanish Civil War in ending in 1939. It lasted for 3 years. One of the most heinous things that he did during the Spanish War, which, if you've ever heard about the bombing of Guernica, which is in the Basque country of northern Spain, that he had the Germans and the Italians bomb town. And Pablo Picasso depicted it in one of his works. It's one of his better known works. But Franco basically had his own people bombed. And speaking of the Basque community, I've done a little bit of research on and continue to do research on it because both of my grandmother had Basque to some extent. More so, my paternal grandmother, who is had ancestry from the Basque, the French part of Basque country, and my maternal grandmother had a little bit from the ancestry of the Basques who left Spain and went to Mexico. That being said, the Basque community was repressed under Frank. I don't know if some of you know, but Spanish is not the only language that spoke Spain. There's at least, I want to say, 3, 4 other languages that are spoken in Spain along with Spanish. Spanish is just the common language for the country, but in other regions of the country, there are some regional languages that are spoken. And in the Basque country, the language known as Euskara was basically prohibited during Franco's rule. Newspapers were basically shut down. Schools were shut down. Even speaking it in public was punishable by imprisonment and even sometimes death. I was watching a video on it the other day. It was from Spain, and it just the language almost died out during Franco's. I think something similar went on in Catalonia, which is in North Spain around Barcelona. I know the use of the Catalan language was strongly prohibited during Franco's rule. I know that the Catholic Church was given big influence in Spanish society during Franco's rule. So there was a lot of, as we say, Christian fascism mixed in as well. And I had seen something online recently when I was doing a little bit of research on it. There was a poster somewhere in Spain during Franco's rule that the translation from Spanish basically said, "If you are Spanish, speak Spanish." So as a way to discourage the use of Spain's other regional language. Again, I don't know how Spain escaped international ostracization, if you will, because we know some other countries became pariahs for various reasons. First one that comes to mind, of course, is South Africa because of apartheid. But why Spain didn't, I don't know. But it was not a good time, and it's something I remember from a class that I took in college. We talked. It was a writing class, but we talked a little bit about the famous director Pedro Almodovar, and under Franco's rule, like movies were heavily censored. A lot of people couldn't take a lot of creative liberties. There wasn't a lot of freedom of expression. And when I took that class in 2002, so George W. Bush was president, and I remember thinking at the time that the Republicans were trying to stifle freedom of expression, and see that now, like they want to control so much of creative liberties and our freedoms of expression. I see it, I see
This
it.
is a common thing with authoritarians,
Yep.
to shut down the educational systems and the media, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. And I'll stick a pin in other examples I have because I think we know there's plenty of other historical examples of where freedom of expression was stifled. I mean, I can think of some of the Iron Curtain countries. But anyway, I just wanted to give a little historical and also cultural insight on what Franco was like for Spain, and it took them a while to emerge from that. Once he died, there was a gradual transition to democracy, and there's been a couple of times recently where in their elections they've had to hold off from the far right because there's been articles about the far right in Spain trying to reemerge, and I think it would be disastrous for Spain. It was too long ago where they were one of the real bright spots in Europe, both socially and economically, and it would be disaster if they went back to what things were like under Franco. So, just wanted to share that with you. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for adding that information to the conversation today. And you always help to get our conversation started and enrich us with so much knowledge. And as a fellow history geek, I love that you were able to come right in and share that information. With this. So thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate it. And like I said, past this prologue, okay? These things are not new. These tactics aren't new. So thanks so much, Joseph. I'm going to go back to hi-fi because obviously you probably said something that made him think about something else. And I have a question for him. And then to Wilson, our great guy who is broadcasting us right now live on Resist Radio. So hi-fi.
I actually want to thank Wilson very much for bringing up Franco and fascism in Spain because, believe it or
Oh,
not,
high five.
there are a
Just real quick, that wasn't me. I'm Wilson here. That was
Joseph, yes.
Joseph. Yes.
Joseph, my apologies. My apologies. Joseph, thank you for doing that. Because believe it or not, there are things that were created. Specifically, there's a Catholic organization named Opus Dei that was started in Franco's fascist Spain. And I would like everyone to make sure that they understand that currently in the United States, the Catholic Information Center in Washington, D.C., is a front operation for Opus Dei in the United States. Two of their members, you have probably heard their names by this point in time, are Bill Barr and Leonard Leah. Bill Barr is a member, sits on the board of Catholic Information Center. All right, I'm seeing lots of hundreds. Cool. Leonard Leah was also a member of Opus Dei. So there's one tie. That's one tie between what's occurring now and fascist Spain.
Thank you for bringing up
There are
Opus Day, by the way. I just sorry to interrupt, but I just really want to say
Oh,
that.
no sweat. No, it's very important. I think people need to understand that. And I'm not talking about the Dan Brown mystical Opus Dei who whip themselves in ascetic chambers and are assassins. No, I'm talking about Opus Dei who wear suits and ties and sit in our boardroom and on our city council. That's the Opus Dei I'm talking about.
And are still very
I'm sure
much
you have.
connected to the Catholic Church. They have not, disavowed them.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the people adjacent to Opus Dei is an individual named Cardinal Vigano, and Cardinal Vigano is Lieutenant General retired Mike Flynn's personal priest, who also spreads QAnon propaganda and attacks America on a consistent basis. The other thing you need to be aware of out of the Catholic Church is something called Knights of Malta. If you look up Phyllis Schlafly's funeral, Phyllis Schlafly was covered in a Knights of Malta flag. Leonard Leo, who I mentioned earlier, who was instrumental in orchestrating the six fascists on our Supreme Court, he is also a Knight of Malta. I have personally trolled members of the Knights of Malta because fuck them. Anyway, other things that are going on in Spain that we need to discuss that are very important. One is the Catalonian separatist movement, because if you look up Catalonian separatist movement and Russia, you will find out that Russia was indeed funneling money to the Catalonian separatist movement. Another operation that I think is very important for people to be aware of was there's a very popular rapper in Spain who said, fuck the king. So they are using the wedge of the monarchy, either you support the king or you don't, to cause social division. This is an operation running in another country. Perhaps if we see them in another country, we will learn to recognize here in the United States. And that's all I wanted to add. So thank you for bringing up Franco and fascist Spain, Joseph.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for just drilling down on that information. And I knew as soon as you mentioned Opus Deus that Soul Sister was going to go, yeah, thank you for mentioning that because, she has often said that people are not aware of it or understand it or mention it that much. So, again, wonderful. You guys have just added so much rich information and important knowledge to this conversation today. I'm always blown away because, none of this stuff is scripted or anything, but it just happens. It happens over and over again. And I want to thank all of you for making that so. So thanks, Hi Fi. So up next, we have Wilson.
Hey Dee, hey everyone. Hey, we're talking a lot about okay, forgive my tongue here, but it's just I have never gotten this word authoritarianism, which I'm going to be using a lot today. But what I really wanted to cover about it was the psychology behind it. Because you know what, in my community, we've had a lot of, say, examples of this in various chat boards and internet groups around. We have experienced authoritarianism today in our political party system. The funny thing is it's always been there, but these days we are pulling more and more research and data out to bring all of that to light. And it's why these days we have the ability to make these connections and see them in the larger groups and lights that they are in. As we can see, we've been having this problem throughout the ages. And what drives authoritarianism is, honestly, the people that support it. There are people out there who truly believe in hierarchy. As for me, I'm an American citizen. I was born in America. I believe that I'm a free man. All right. I believe that we as American citizens have right to choose our leaders and to guide our country into the kind of places that we want it to be. I believe that that was what we fought for, right? We fought for freedom, the freedom of choice, and I believe that it's a principle that is, I don't want to say uniquely American, but I think it's a principle that really drives America and Americans to be who they want to be. Is the fact that they have the freedom to be that kind of person that they dream to be. And I mean, I'm 35, right? I'm an adult, but I do remember my childhood times and going through school as I was growing up and looking at the kinds of heroes that were coming out at the time, and the things that they were doing that was like, American. I believe that Americans like to be the good guys, and I believe that wholeheartedly, that we like to make good choices and try to better our communities and have better systems for everybody around us. I believe that Americans like to believe in equity. As we can see, we have a whole society right now that for some reason is counters or is a reflection of a different ideal. And what I found with people who are attractive to authoritarianism is that these people, and this is coming from personal experience, so this isn't something that would be like documented or I could find in a news article or something. But I have found that the people like to give up their right in exchange for responsibilities towards their actions. See, they would much rather blame somebody else rather than take responsibility for their own actions in their life. So, and it can be going down as things as to just blaming somebody else for something that they decided to buy. And they just want somebody else to be in charge and in control because you know what? I feel like these types of people don't trust their own thoughts and actions very well. I believe that they want to find say like higher powers to like give up the responsibilities of their actions. And it's a weird theory, but when you search for the psychology of authoritarianism, there are people out there who have done significant research on this idea, right? That it takes a certain kind of person and a certain kind of personality to support authoritarianism. And one of those things is, they just want to feel secure. So they're going off,
You're describing kind of like cult behavior, and with some of them, which we know that this is pretty much what is going on, and it is the ability to find a savior and to blame other people for the ills in their life, and their community. So I
you
agree
know,
with you on.
thank you so much for simplifying that for me. I really appreciate it. But yes, it is very much cult mentality of where they want to just, blame other people and expect some kind of miracle to happen to save them, or to put their belief in some kind of savior who can absolve them of all their actions towards a certain type of towards a certain type of goal. And to me, it amazes me that we could like psychologically categorize these kinds of people and see what kinds of things creates those type of people. And one of the most prevalent things is the fact that these people cannot take criticism at all. They would much rather believe things at a face value. Than to say have like say think of a complex solution or theory as to why something might be happening.
Right. Critical thinking is definitely missing in these cult organizations. And it is also something that is missing in our education system, which allows people to get engulfed and sucked in to this type of thinking and hive mentality type of thing, because it is important for us to be able to exercise some critical thinking skills, to be able to discern, fact and from fiction and misinformation and disinformation and these types of things. But sometimes people are lazy, and so that is again why I talk about the importance of citizen engagement, because it requires something of us. It requires that we do something. And I often say that I feel a lot of times people just act as if our democracy is imperfect as it is, that they enjoy the fruits of it, thinking that it just runs on autopilot. And it doesn't. It runs because of our involvement in it. And it requires a constant involvement and active, hand in it, no matter how small these actions are. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I fully believe in that. I've come to believe that democracy requires participation. If you don't participate in democracy, then unfortunately you're going to lose it. Someone is going to come and take it away from you. Someone's going to come and take your freedoms away from you, right? And so for me, even just the smallest things count. So you know what? If any, for everyone who stopped to like, retweet, or reply to today's space, I appreciate that. I appreciate all of that, and that's also why I'm here today, is to help boost you on the radio. We really want to help you and help everybody get out there, because we believe that the more people who put their thought into it, the better democracy we can develop.
I absolutely agree. And again, I thank you for using the resources that you have to help boost our community and our message, and for the work that you do, because I want to take an opportunity to shout out the climate work that you do, your climate club, and the fabulous space that I happened in on Sunday that you were having with a lot of climate activists. And Miss Melody gave a stellar presentation on how to fundraise, and spoke to that. So again, there are so many people here doing good work in important areas. Like, we can't all do everything, but we can all do something. And I really appreciate all the people who are part of this community, who are doing something, who are passionate about something. And I have another one of our great friends who has come up. I know he is working really hard, and he has taken a little time out of his day to come and share with us in his area of expertise, and that would be Geechee. So, Wilson, I'm going to let you kind of finish up there, and then I'm going to go to Geechee.
Well, the last thing I just want to say is, you know what? I really appreciate everybody's work here. We're all warriors. Yes, I believe that thoroughly. And that, you know what? I know everybody is hunting for a breakthrough because we've been at this for so long, but we are fighting a very large and powerful enemy, so we have to take things a step at a time. So everybody stay strong out there, keep fighting the good fight, and just, remember, we wouldn't be here without you.
Great words of encouragement. Yes, exactly. And success happens, especially when you're talking about big issues around saving, preserving, perfecting, and protecting our democracy. That work is incremental. And I know a lot of young people don't like to hear that. They want things to change. And some of them have bought into the libertarian kind of anarchistic ideology and stuff. And, what I like to remind them of is that, okay, you don't like the system, and you want to tear it all down. What comes in its place? Because I think about it like the Republicans who, didn't want the Affordable Care Act, and they always had something better, except they didn't. They just want to destroy it, but nothing better to go in its place. And incrementalism is how lasting change actually comes about big change. And I will remind you guys once again that even Hitler recognized that he tried a coup, it didn't work. So then he decided, hey, I am going to have to be part of the system, and we're going to have to work incrementally to advance our agenda, which is what he did. So, that's how change works. It's incremental efforts on the part of many people. So thank you for that, Wilson. So we're going to go next to Geechee, and then we're going to start winding down. So if any of you here on the stage, I'm going to give you some opportunities for some last thoughts and words. So start thinking about that. And I just want to thank all of you for joining in a great conversation today. So, Geechee, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad. First of all, I've only listened for like the last 30 to 45 minutes, and I am stunned. Like, I didn't expect to turn in on Monday and listen to a lot of really good conversation when it came to authoritarianism, fascism in Southern Europe, Eastern Europe. We always talk about what happened in Eastern Europe or in Germany, but we seem to give Spain and Italy and some of those other nations that are in southern Italy a pass for something that is still something that is ingrained in their society. Then I heard about the Opus Dei part, the Knights of Malta part, and I'm just like, oh, how I'm Catholic. I think people know that by now. But so much of how Catholics are portrayed in society is related to fascism, to how the Italian, because our church, unfortunately, made that bet when it came down to where we were going to be in World War II and aligned with fascists instead and Nazis as opposed to aligning with what the Jesuits would have done or with Dominicans and other type of orders would have done instead. So I think it's really good to hear that conversation, but I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that today. I am like chill pill number one today, and I just want to like give like some really good information. I think there are two people that I know people probably have a bad feeling about 538 because it used to be run by Nate Silver. Nate Silver no longer works for Disney, ABC, or 538 anymore. G. Elliott Morris, he's a Brown graduate, I believe, Brown or Dartmouth, I believe it's Brown. Really, really, really smart kid. Now runs that, and it's more aligned with ABC News than it was beforehand and in the past. But they do an average of all the polls, the presidential polls, and also Logan, I believe his last name is Phillip, does Race to the White House, also does an average of the poll. And something happened last week that didn't get a lot of media coverage when it came to these presidential election poll. Biden took the lead. And as people now are getting it in their mind that it's actually going to be Biden versus Trump, because most voters didn't think it was going to be Biden versus Trump. They thought somebody else was going to be the Republican nominee, somebody else was going to be the Democratic nominee, because, again, most people don't listen to the news or consume news media in any shape, form, or fashion at all nowadays. So yes, we had this little incident that happened that Biden took the lead, and that lead should grow. We'll probably see another change as this first trial comes about. I don't know how that's going to affect the polling because a lot of people do not think that this New York trial is a trial that is worthy of being prosecuted. That's what the polling's been very consistent on that. The Georgia case and the classified document cases are the two cases. Oh, and the 1-6 cases are the three cases that people are really think are the most legit. The hush money case, not so much. I mean, from having a boss that got in a situation like that, it's amazing to me that he can't get his wife to like, he can't humble himself enough to say like, oh, I did this because I didn't want to hurt my wife and my family. But he doesn't love his wife. He doesn't love his family.
Tell them
So
about your boss, Geechee.
yeah, I used to work for a senator from North Carolina that, while his wife was dying of cancer, the woman I loved to death decided to have an affair and have a baby during that while running in 2008. He was
Oh,
the runner.
are you kidding me?
I am dead serious.
Oh my, I know exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah,
Geechee.
I,
Oh
I
my
am dead
God.
serious, dead serious. Anytime I go to DC and I hang out with people that I worked with in the 90s and early 2000s, it is a running joke because I was an EA schedule. I was EA and head schedule. So like I wasn't working for him during this time, but I made it a really big point when I did work for him to make sure that he wasn't in situations like that because you could tell when somebody's a sneaky link, and it was there. And women, and I know this from being gay too, that when people are attracted to you, they're going to let you know they're attracted to you. So they'll send their panties to your hotel room. They'll buy you a drink. They'll try to do what they got to do to get there. And then I don't know what happened between 2006 and 2008, but those type of guardrails weren't there anymore. And I feel bad because, in my opinion, your job as an EA and a scheduler is to mainly, and people are like, oh, you're working for the senator. In my opinion, you're mainly working for the spouse, making sure the spouse is aware of everything, that family time is put in there, things that are going to keep their relationship together, because in most cases, many spouses are very, very active. In this case, she was very active in the office going on, where his career was going.
She was
One of the main,
brilliant. She was
she's brilliant,
brilliant.
and he's
Oh
and
my
he's and
God.
he wasn't, which is like, and I can tell you time after time, so many people I have met in Washington, and I'm not a Republican, but I'm going to give another example of it. Sanford, the former governor of South Carolina, former congressman of South Carolina, his wife Jenny is so brilliant. She's a good person, a literally good person. He's the scum of the earth and is dumb as fuck. But these women, it really annoys me so much in life of seeing these women that are brilliant subjugate themselves to get the man to where the family wants to be at. And I can say this about other people that are really popular in this room too, but I won't say it. But in most instances, most of the time when I meet the female spouse, she's smarter, better, more prepared, would be a better congressperson, senator, mayor, so on and so forth. And it's really sad to see. So yeah, that's my main point for today. Was I didn't need to go off on this rant about that, but I am going to listen to this entire space back because I am enthused, and I'm also scared at the same time. I'm enthused because I like the history, and I like these conversations that deal with history and where these movements come from, so on and so forth. But at the same time, I'm also like, Jesus, if we don't really participate, this can really happen. This can happen here in this country. And this is not like these efforts have never tried to happen in this country. The America First Party existed in this country. Charles Lindbergh existed in this country. Huey Long existed in this country. Like, these are not foreign things. These are not like conspiracy theories and y'all are coming in here every Monday and saying, oh, I have this conspiracy theory. No, these are actual real life things, historical things that have happened that are possible if people do not show up and show out. And if we don't try to break, and I don't know how the hell you're going to do this, to get people to actually consume media, because I'm over the, oh, MSNBC did this. No one's watching MSNBC. Why would I care what MSNBC is doing? No one's watching CNN. Like, people are getting news off of Facebook still. And Lord knows what some quack can post on Facebook, and then all of a sudden everybody thinks it's true. So again, thank you for having this space. I am going to listen to this space from the very beginning to the very end, because the last three conversations I heard were so intriguing. And I love what y'all are doing on Mondays. And thank y'all for having me today. And thank you for everybody else for participating, all the speakers that spoke earlier, and all the listeners to come here and make sure these two women's space gets the oxygen that it needs, because it's very vital during these times.
Aw, thank you, Geechee.
Oh,
We
and
love
congratulations to
you.
the South Carolina women's basketball team for beating fashion. Let me shut up. Bye.
Yes, and now that is Geechee's job now. He works in that arena. So I am again honored that you took a little time out of your busy schedule to come in and share in another area of your expertise today. So I feel like that was a media fail in the coverage of those games. So we won't belabor that, but that's one of the things that we're going to continue to do is to call out the media fails and compliment the great media efforts. So again, yes, it's been a great space, Geechee. So do listen back and amplify and share it. And I'm wishing you well, a great rest of your day. And again, thank you. So, as we begin to wrap up here, I'm going to go in this order for some last words. I'm going to go Joseph, Susan, Mud Puppy, Hi Fi, Wilson, and then my fabulous co host. So, Joseph.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ms. D. Yes, it's been another wonderful Monday, another wonderful, great space, very informative. I think kind of to what Geechee just said about things that were, the fears that things like this can, can happen. I think we're
Hence the title of the space,
yeah.
Past is Prologue. Okay, people pay attention.
Yep, exactly. We're gonna, and I know Geechee has mentioned this in previous spaces. We're gonna need to have to use these fear tactics because if I know I'm finding it, and I'm sure others are finding it that we don't know what's going to get people to motivate people to vote. I mean, with some of the more rational things that is, say for example, the all of the different accomplishments of this administration. But if that's still not registering with people, okay, now we're going to have to really get down to the nitty gritty and say, are you willing to throw away our democracy for fascism? Are you willing to possibly lose all of your basic civil rights? And I think again, to kind of point about the polling, yeah, people are gradually waking up, and I think people are seeing the dangers that are out there. So I really enjoyed bringing up some of the historical context today. I definitely a conversation I would like to continue because I've got plenty other of historical examples that we can talk about from different countries and with authoritarianism and the dangers that they represent here. I was trying to scan the timeline for any other late breaking news regarding anything here out west, but nothing really of note as far as politics goes. I think I did put either in the Nestor or my timeline about how much cash on hand Jackie Rosen has for her reelection. I put my money where my mouth is, and I made another contribution to her campaign because, like Missy, you were saying earlier, any dollar helps. So yeah, like, and I think G. Marie was saying it too. Like, you know what? I can afford to not go to Starbucks 2 or 3 times this week, and I'd rather put that money to help preserve our democracy, especially when it's in a state that I care very much about, like Nevada. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next.
Well, thank you, Joseph. And we always love having you here. And I am looking forward to, and I hope that you do schedule a space on this topic. So, I mean, I don't feel like we can talk enough about it. I think it's very important for people to understand. And as I said, since they are not teaching these things in school, and or people are not remembering them or connecting the dots, I think it's very important that we establish that information and help folks connect the dots of history, the past situations to present day, because I see them. I see how these things are rhyming, and it is scary, but I still remain optimistic. And I thank you for your contributions today. So up next, we've got Susan, and then Mud Puppy.
Thank you, Misty. I just wanted to thank everyone too, and especially the last, I think it was Hi-Fi V, who talked about Cambridge Analytica. And I remember how upset I was when this came all about at the time. And it's been so many years already. And I know my hair was on fire back then. And I think people forget how much we are influenced. And it's like with the pandemic, I feel like people just, there's this mass amnesia, and people just want to move on and don't think about it anymore. And the threats are still there, like from social media companies. Like on this platform here, we know what Elon Musk is up to. That's what's worrisome. On the other hand, I can tell you, we have our primers here in Pennsylvania on April 23rd. I will be an election worker, and I'm interested to see how, if I can get a feel how this is going to go, because we have closed primaries, so you can vote only if you're registered as a Democrat or Republican. And it's going to be interesting to see the turnout. And of course, it will be even more interesting to see what's happening in November. But I'm hoping to get a feel for, where the trend is going. So let's.
Again, you blow me away, Susan. Now you tell me you're an election worker.
Yes.
That is
That was.
just awesome, especially considering the assault that the former administration has waged on them. That is still ongoing, and these are people who are very much integral parts of making the wheels of democracy turn. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you all. Thank you.
Awesome, that is great. So Mud Puppy, you're up next.
Well, thank you, Miss D. Yeah, today was a very fantastic space. I really appreciate just learning from everybody. It it kind of makes me mad that, my history was so whitewashed that I have to learn about a lot of history in Twitter spaces. But I digress. It was really great to hear Susan's story about calling into C-SPAN and recognizing, Project 2025 and the groups involved. And that just like really warms my heart because that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is to educate people on, the fascist groups that are within Project 2025. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled. Also, keep your eyes peeled for Leonard Leo's name, who, he pops up very frequently in the news, but is not necessarily covered. So, yeah, just keep your eyes peeled, and great space today, everyone. Thanks for teaching me some new stuff.
Well, thank you. And thank you for bringing the information that you work to dig into, to bring to us and share with us. And again, like I said, you and I will be having a more in-depth conversation about it. I cannot wait to have that so that we can share with the community. And if you're not following Mud Puppy, you definitely want to do that, because she's all in, 10 toes down on digging up the dirt on Leonard Leo for sure. And her and I both like to dig into those dark money tunnels. She's on Leonard Leo and I'm on the Kochs, because they have been very busy in corrupting our democracy here in Tennessee. They are currently busy here with this voucher campaign, because they are paying volunteers to go out and spread misinformation, and they are also threatening lawmakers who don't support it with opponents, and giving them really like hundreds of thousands of dollars to oppose candidates, Republican candidates who are not supporting their voucher scheme. So again, keep doing the great work, my dear. And up next, we have Hi-Fi.
I'm just thinking about all the crazy stuff that's been going on in our reality, and some other resource. Rachel Maddow did a podcast called Ultra
Oh, yes, we've
about.
talked about her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good podcast, because a lot of the things this if go into the silver shirt and the I am cult, and Cardinal Pelly, or Pelly, I forget his first name. But these charismatic evangelical preachers who were pro-not, there was, the militias, etc. We're at the same point in history, right back again to haunt white supremacists and these fascists. And if we do make it through this, we really, really need to have a long, serious conversation about how we shame our nation enough that these vulnerabilities no longer exist, right? I mean, all this stuff is right. Misogyny is stupid. Women are awesome. Racism is stupid. People of other colors are fucking awesome. For their food, if nothing else, right? I mean, come on, people. All of these divisions, Christians versus non-Christians, all of these divisions are being utilized and weaponized. And I say Russia a lot, but it's not just Russia. We have to acknowledge that China's in on it. The UAE is in on it. Saudi Arabia is in on it. The Likud party of Israel with Netanyahu's action, they're in on it, right? This is a full court press to enslave humanity again. And the reason they want Trump so bad is because America, we got all the guns. And, we've been told we shouldn't be world cop and everything, but we could be so much better as a country. And we really need to turn this whole fucking world around. There's an old Chinese greeting it's an old Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times. Not a blessing. We certainly live in interesting times.
For sure, for sure. Very poignant. And I love all of the knowledge that you have brought to the space today, all of the great work that you and Heidi do. And I would also encourage you guys, like I said, not necessarily follow Hi-Fi's account because he
Yeah, I'll be gone
yeah,
soon.
he'll be losing this account, but follow his work. They do RadPod, Radicalized podcast, over on YouTube, and they also stream it here. So if you see it popping up on Twitter, join them, but follow them, subscribe to them. They do great work. And Heidi also has a fantastic Substack and community of her own that I am fortunate enough to join and participate in as often as I can. So it's a great group of people that provide great wealth of knowledge. So again, so thankful that you were able to join us in our conversation today, Hi Fi. And I have a question for you because in my research about white Christian nationalism, this minister who is, a big warrior against it, Jim Wallace. I was listening to a podcast with him, and he mentioned something, but yet I can find no other evidence of it. And I know that you're in Ohio, but he mentioned that they just recently purged 6,000 people from the voter rolls. Is that true, or is it recent? Do you know?
It's probably recent. There are a lot of lawsuits being filed, and if the person to look to would be Frank LaRose, if anybody was purged, because he'd be talking about.
Okay. Well,
He's our Secretary of State currently, and if you purged anything, that's the guy to talk about.
okay. I will do some more searching and digging. And if you come across it, if you could, DM me or let me know. I hope to see you guys in the community tomorrow. But I'm really curious because that's something else that I'm looking at. Because I think that the former guy and his band of misfits know that they really can't win fairly, but they are devising many ways to win, to cheat, to win, or to cause the win of President Biden to be brought into question, like many now still, like not believing that, he legitimately is president and won. So the voter purging is just one of those many ways. So I try to keep abreast of all of the places where they're doing this, so that we can spread the word and make sure people are aware and encourage them to check their voter registration and all of those things. So again, thank you for joining us today. And up next, last we have Wilson, and then my fabulous co-host will give us some closing words.
Hey everyone. Hey, I just wanted to build on what somebody said earlier. Unfortunately, my Twitter's not showing me who's been speaking, so I haven't been able to figure out everybody. But with the polls being towards Biden right now, with us picking up in the polls, we're also maintaining a lead in fundraising right now. Dictator Trump just had one of his largest fundraising events, raising 50 million, but we're still in the lead with about I think it was 40 to 50 million still ahead. So we've got a
Yes, and
very
his big haul, his donors maxed out, but President Biden's donors are not. So
yeah. So we've got a really good foothold. And I can see a lot of positive changes coming up for us in the future. But we don't want to get complacent. So everybody, please keep working towards getting Biden elected. And I just wanted to thank everyone who was in this space today. Thank you. You folks are amazing, and thank you so much, Dee, for hosting.
well, thank you. And again, I just want to thank you for helping to amplify our space, our conversation, and our work by hosting us on your Resist Radio to allow us to reach a broader audience. I'm so grateful to you for that. So, and thank you for your contributions to the space today as well. So, up next, Soul Sister, you have the floor, my dear.
I also thank you, Wilson and Resist Radio, for helping us get out the message to inform and help educate voters, especially during this election cycle. I'm sorry, it's just it is too important to not be bold and aggressive. We spent a lot of time focusing on the fact that the former guy is running for president. And while that is extremely important, there are people who have supported and participated even in helping to plan and be a part of the January 6th insurrection, which they still try to deny and play mind games about. Oh, it wasn't a insurrection. It was a protest, or it was a riot, even, I'll give you. And never really putting the fine point on the definition of the fact that they were absolutely trying to stop handing the handover of the government from one hand to the neck of the rightfully elected president of the United States of America. And if they had succeeded, we would be looking at a different country right now. And people try to downplay this because it's easier for their masses to digest. And if there's one thing that the American public has a lock on, many people don't like looking at the ugly history of our country, even if it's recent. It's easier to play that. Well, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I just heard someone talk about how, Susan, about the pandemic and how it seems like everyone has gotten amnesia. And it is absolutely true. Everyone forgets how awful things were getting even prior to that, prior to the pandemic hitting. Over 1 million deaths. I mean, it's just sickening. But it's not just the former president who is running. There are candidates running all across this country. There is a story in the Nest from NBC News. There is Derek Evans running for Congress in West Virginia, District 1. He had to resign. He was a lawmaker and he had to resign because of his conviction. And, during his, sentencing, he was oh so sorry and claimed to have so many regrets. And he got 3 months. And now he's campaigning again on being a January 6th participant and claiming it was a false flag, saying he was a political, he's been politically persecuted. And Bob Good, the Freedom Caucus chair, has endorsed him. There's Kimberly Dragoo. She's running in Missouri. She pleaded guilty to January 6 charges. Michelle Morrow of North Carolina and Katrina Pearson of Texas. Both of these women attended the Stop the Steal speech. There's Jacob Chansley. He's running for office in Arizona, District 8. He's the Viking guy, in case you guys, the one that was crying in jail about, not having his vegan food. That's him. Yeah.
QAnon shaman.
Yeah. Yes, the QAnon shaman. Thank you. I couldn't remember. I just remember that dumb outfit. There's also Jacob Riddle. He's running in New Hampshire, District 2. Jacob. Oh, I'm sorry, I already said that one. Then there's Anthony Kern. He's the state senator in Arizona. I think he's running for re-election, and he is under investigation for his role in the fake elector scheme. And I know this is just a small portion. These are not, there are current members sitting in our Congress right now who had knowledge, who encouraged, who supported, who helped plan, who wanted to be a part of tearing this country down. So there is no rest for us. We have to get out and we have to fight and we have to keep talking to people and we have to try to keep informing people and making them aware across this nation. There is no state that is safe at all. I don't care if you're blue, I don't care if you're purple, and definitely not if you're red. I mean, let's just be real. That is the conversation that we need to be having over and over again. Have some bullet points that you just keep going back to. Stay on your message, regardless of how they try to throw you off. And believe me, you see it on your timelines all the time. If you're active and engaged on here, you see it all the time where people try to throw you off. They want to take you in a totally different direction. But if you just stay on your message, you cannot lose. If you present the facts, don't get into the whataboutisms. Stay where you know what you know. It's important. We have to talk to our youth. We have to figure out some way, and we have to meet them where they are. I am not a person who has been totally comfortable with YouTube, but I'm making myself get there because that's where a lot of people go to. that's the type of media that they like to ingest and learn from or gain knowledge from, because it's, the age of TikTok. It's the age of the reels on Instagram, and the lives, and the this, and the shorts. And so you have to meet people where they are in order to get them where we need to be. It takes time to build consistent consensus. Make sure that you have opportunities where you can interact with some of the same people over and over again, where you can maybe get them to start seeing where you're coming from and understanding what the dangers are here, because there is serious danger. And it's like Hi-Fi said, there will be unrest, violence even. But maybe if we reach out enough, we can minimize the damage to our communities, to this country, to our democracy. It's really, really unbelievably important. I think that people have bought into this angst, and whether they call themselves QAnon, whether they call themselves MAGA, or whether they just call themselves uncommitted. It's as if they have the Peter Pan syndrome, where they want the benefits of acting as adults, but they don't want any of the responsibilities of it, as it's been stated in here, which means that they don't want to take the time to educate themselves. They don't want to take the time to make a choice and stand on principle and say, I don't love every single thing about this candidate, but I agree with 85% of it. And I will keep pressure on to get the other 15%. It's as if people don't even recognize that the entire country runs on bipartisanship. You say that word, and it's like they hear it and they recognize it and they pretend like they know what it is, but they don't really understand that that is called cooperative negotiation, something I'm extremely familiar with. And maybe it's because I have a union background. Maybe that gives me a leg up, that I understand that when you go into sit down with the other side, even if it's adversarial, you're going to come away with something, and you try to make sure that what you come away with benefits the most people and does the least amount of damage and harm to everyone. The Republican Party is very exclusive. They do not want everybody in their tent, but they definitely want to affect or disaffect everyone who is not in their tent. I don't care that people complain that, the Democrats are big tent, inclusive party, because I think that's what makes us better. I don't necessarily have to agree with every single Democrat that I meet, but I know on principle that we all stand for the freedom and the protection and the democracy and the equity that this country had promised at its inception was to be mine, yours, theirs, everyone. And I demand that we continue to grow and make that dream real. That's really where I'm at right now. And that's really all I can add for today. It has been an amazing space. It was so great having new voices in here. Hi-Fi, I've heard you speak before. It's just been a while. But it and Susan, actually, so I guess they weren't new. It's just been a long time, and it was so good to hear you come in and bring a new element to our conversation. And I hope you guys come back, and I hope we get more new people who are courageous enough to stand up and live their voice and their experience and their expertise and their humanity to this fight, because that is what it's going to take. No one can sit out on the sidelines and just watch. Everybody's got to do a small part. And I absolutely loved these little rebellious acts that may not seem like much, but could amount to so much more than what we ever could dream of. Thank you, High Five, for those. It just blows my mind. Thank you, Susan, for reminding us so we can call in the C-SPAN and make a difference, that we can do something. We had a lot of speakers, and I'm not trying to name them all. I'm just trying to think of some of these key little things that really stuck out to me today, and energized me. And it is very easy for us to be discouraged, but I'm telling you that when you see someone discouraged on your timeline, it takes absolutely zero effort to reach out and encourage them and remind them they are not in this fight alone. We are all in this together, and we survive it and claim victory over it together. So thank you so much for everyone who joined us today, everyone who's listening, and everyone who will listen. It's been an amazing space. It never disappoints me. I say that every week, and I mean it sincerely every week. I am humbled to be among you, humbled to be sitting next to Miss D, and grateful for the opportunity to have this dialogue and be in this fight with all of you. Thank you.
Aw, thank you, Soul Sister. We love you and all of your wonderful contributions today and every day. And the expertise that you bring to our community is invaluable. And you made so many great points. I don't want to keep folks here too long, but there are a few things. It has been a fabulous space and conversation today, made so by all of you. That is the folks who actively participated, but those of you who are down in the gallery listening. I see you. You matter, and you are just as important. I never take it for granted that I open a space and you guys show up. And I just want you to know I appreciate it. I never take it for granted, and I love you for that. I just want to kind of remind you, as I'm kind of giving my closing thoughts, to look at the things that are in the nest and the jumbotron, some great information, and to highlight a few of those things, and kind of expound on some of the things that other speakers have said. That Soul Sister was touching on, like, it takes all of us being involved everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're in a solid blue state or solid blue county, because they're blue until they're not. And I always use her state of Michigan as a prime example, because it was not always blue. And when it was red the last time, when it was controlled by Republicans, we had the Flint water crises. Okay, the iteration of Republicans that we see now are not bringing good things to governance. So that's one thing that we have to keep in mind. Black STEM shared her personal experience with us, and also a way to respond to it, to remind us that when we are out here doing good work, that there will be opposition operatives who are seeking ways to dissolve our work, to disparage our work, and we cannot be deterred, because this truly is the fight of a lifetime. I know some people get sick of some of the trite old sayings, like this election is the most important one of our lives. It really is. And I think that we probably wouldn't have to say it if people took it serious every time. But because people don't, it keeps remaining important, and it keeps getting worse. But folks, our back is up against the wall. This election will determine whether or not we remain a democracy. Okay, so it's incumbent upon all of us to do whatever we can, wherever we can. I want to shout out some great candidates that we have had in this space, like Royce Kennerview, who is running against Talib. Follow him, support him, contribute to the campaign if you can. Lauren Simmons in Texas, who is a great activist around education. She is in a runoff. Follow her, support her, amplify her efforts. Brian Robinson, who is running here in my area, and the work that Blue Tennessee is doing. Remind you that we will be hosting our first member meeting on this Thursday, April 11th. And the time I am not certain about. I've got to get over in my Slack channel and be sure, but I will be posting about it. I think it's 6:30 p.m. Central Time for me, but I will let you know. But I invite you all to come and join us, support Blue Tennessee and the work that we're doing, because it is in these places where organizations like Blue Tennessee, Blue Missouri, and Blue Ohio, where we have Republican strongholds, that we have candidates who are brave enough to run. And sometimes winning is not the ultimate goal. Just challenging the extremists who are there does a lot because it forces accountability and transparency. And it also speaks to the incrementalism of making change. So it's important that we start taking some of these tiny steps. I want to draw your attention to an article that's in the Nest from The Guardian about my state and how democracy, like a lot of people don't vote until, the presidential, the big elections or whatever, but it's important that we vote every time in every election from the local dog catcher to the president. All of those elections matter because it is really, as David Pepper likes to remind us, in these places, in these states that have been captured by the Republicans, and in these small counties and communities where democracy is being taken away right now in real time, things that they are doing. My hometown is one of those places, and it breaks my heart. But again, I am not discouraged. I know that things can change, and I remain hopeful. But The Guardian wrote an article, You Have Imprisoned Our Democracy Inside Republicans' Domination of Tennessee. It's a great article. Another article, because of the focus that we had on the space today, past this prologue, discussing authoritarianism. I like to talk about history and dark money and connect those dots to the current issues that we're facing because they're all connected. I love that Mud Puppy is so focused on dark money, especially Leonard Leo, because these billionaires are actually the ones pulling the strings of our democracy. It is the candidates that are out there, but they are being funded, guided, and instructed by these people. So it's very important that we not forget that. So that takes me to the next article, which was written by Dean Obadiah in his Substack, but it's on my timeline. It's in the Nest. It's on his timeline. And it's Trump's wealthy donors will gladly end our democracy to make more money. And he compares them to the industrialists and the billionaires of the time of Hitler and the rise in fascism and with Mussolini. They did the same thing for their own greed and profiteering. They were willing to sell democracy down the road. And with that, I also would like to remind you of a tweet that's on my timeline, which is an iteration of a letter from our European friends on authoritarianism, and I will be adding to it. I think it's good to remind people. And this was written by people who have experienced this. So they are like warning us. And there are 15 steps of the first year of authoritarianism. I've listed 10. I will add the other 15, but they talk about what it looks like. And, like I'm just going to read the first one. They will come to power with a campaign based on fear, scaremongering, and distorting the truth. Nevertheless, their victory will be achieved through a democratic electoral process. But beware, as this will be their argument. Every time you question the legitimacy of their actions, they will claim a mandate from the people to change the system. So remember, gaining power through a democratic system does not give them permission to cross legal boundaries and undermine said democracy. So it's really important that you share that thread, that you understand it, and that you read it. And then that takes me to, and I will post the link because they also talk about counteractions and things that we can take. And I think that's important too, because I don't just like to scare people and have them so afraid that they feel debilitated. I want people to be afraid afraid because we should be. These are scary times, and what they are trying to do is very scary indeed. But I don't want the fear to debilitate you. I want it to be a healthy dose of fear to motivate you, to let you know what's at risk, but also arm you with solutions. And this thread will have that. And this is, like I said, from our European friends who have already seen this and experienced it. So do take a look at that. And then today, as you know, I often do when we talk about authoritarianism, I always close with encouraging words from the late great Representative John Lewis. But when we talk about authoritarianism, I also like to remind people of the quote from Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So let none of us get to a point where we say that, because we are stronger together. It is going to take all of us in this fight to save our democracy. We don't have to agree with everything. We don't have to love one another, but we should be in love with democracy enough to do the work that's required to save it, so that we can have another day and opportunity to discuss our disagreements and to maybe negotiate and compromise with one another, where we can find a solution, as Soul Sister likes to say, in the negotiation that does not cause that uh, causes minimum harm but brings greater good. And just remind people, as bleak as the times are, something that our Speaker Emeritus always says is that when we fight, we win. That is something our Madam Vice President says. And then Speaker Emeritus says, we don't agonize, we organize. And so that is what we do when we gather here every week. We're organizing, and we're sharing resources and works and information and inspiration and encouragement. So I just, again, want to thank you all for participating in this initiative, in this effort with me. And so with that being said, I will leave you with the words from the late, great Representative John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. So never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. So I thank all of you good troublemakers. I want to encourage you to continue making noise, getting out there and getting in good trouble, because we can overcome the crisis that we are currently in. It is not going to happen overnight, and it is not going to happen without our efforts. So our democracy is only as strong as our participation and our involvement in it. So I encourage you all to do whatever you can, wherever you can, because I believe in the power of the ripple effect. Like, we can't be everywhere, we can't do everything, but we can all do something where we are. And then someone else does something, and someone else does something. And that's how that's how we're going to win and to achieve and improve on this American experiment of democracy, and have a better life for us all. So I am wishing you all a great rest of the afternoon and a wonderful week ahead. And I'll see you all back here next Monday, same time, 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. And go be great, guys. Keep making noise and good trouble. And with that, I leave you all with peace and blessings.